Good afternoon. I'll call this informational hearing of the Assembly Human Services Committee to order. Today, the Assembly Human Services Committee is joined by members of the API Legislative Caucus to hear about progress on addressing hate in California through the Stop the Hate program. I want to thank our presenters today for making the time to share the important work they are doing to stop hate in California and support communities. The Stop the Hate program was established after the uptick of abhorrent hate incidents and crimes in the API community during the COVID pandemic. In 2023, 2.6 million Californians directly experienced at least one act of hate, and 5 million Californians witnessed at least one act of hate. Although we don't have data back on last year, 2025, it is clear that hate is more rampant than ever. While President Trump incites hate in this country by posting hateful racist videos of President Obama calling Somali Americans garbage, it is critical for California to continue to stand up against hate. Addressing hate incidents in California is not just morally important, it is also critical for a functioning and successful society. Exposure to hate, discrimination, and bigotry of all sorts impacts educational achievement, economic opportunity, and community cohesion. I was proud to be part of the Legislative API Caucus and our focus for the equity budget when I first came in during the pandemic, during the surge of anti-Asian hate, but this program has been so pivotal in serving so many communities beyond the API community, especially for our Latino, Black communities, LGBTQ communities that have all benefited from this program. And I think today it will be important to hear about that investment since it's been almost 5 years or so, to hear about what has come about and how that investment has affected Californians. I would like to invite my colleagues now who have joined me if they would like to speak. And I would like to see if Assemblyman Mike Fong, Chair of the API Caucus, would like to begin with any introductory comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your leadership and efforts in convening this meeting here today and this hearing, and for inviting members of the API Legislative Caucus to join you here today. Proud to be joined by a number of my colleagues as well, and thank you so much to you and to the entire team here for organizing today's event. We know the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community, despite a long history here in the United States, and particularly here in California, has not always been perceived as American. Folks have been asked, where are you from? Where are you really from? While we can go back in history to cite examples of racism and violence targeted towards the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities, the anti-Asian hate that was expressed towards our community, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, with especially racist rhetoric coming out of the federal administration at the time, was very, very particularly disturbing. And first, that was happening just a few years ago. That was happening here in the 21st century. And that acts of hate were expressed as people were just living their daily lives, everyday lives on the streets, while going to and from work, on public transit, and even in our schools. And I'm grateful to the leadership of Stop the Hate and to all the partners here today. We look forward to the robust discussions here today. And thank you so much to all the organizers and to all the community organizations for their leadership and efforts in denouncing hate and in partnership and solidarity with our diverse caucuses as well. And thanks to the leadership of the former chairs of the API Legislative Caucus and our former budget chair, Sowen Ting, with the equity budget that provided funds to support victims, to document the number of incidents, and most important, to educate and work to prevent more hate incidents and to support the training around those efforts as well. Look forward to hearing from the panelists today. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for your leadership in convening us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fong. Do any of my colleagues have any other introductory comments they would like to make? Assemblyman Nguyen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding this, and thank you to everybody who is here today. Prior to becoming elected as a Assembly member, I worked at a nonprofit, Asian Resources, Inc., right here in town, and we were the recipient of this funding. And I can tell you that during the COVID times, it truly did impacted the community that we serve. Not only were we able to give real information that was in language, but appropriately, culturally appropriate way in which they can understand it. Because what most people don't understand is that we are not a monolith in the way in which we speak one language. As a matter of fact, the Vietnamese culture, the Vietnamese language, there are very many other different dialects, and the way in which you give the information is different. You don't just, they hear it on the radio or the news, but it's not perceived, or sometimes it's not registered the same way. And so it takes a trusted messenger. It takes an organization that has been around for decades in serving this community that can deliver this message in a way in which our community can understand it, but also trust. And so this funding was so valuable. And I would say, dare say, saving lives as well, too. Not only protecting, but saving lives. And so it is so crucial and so important that we put everything we can to be able to get the funding back again to ensure that our communities don't feel like uh, it was a one-time deal, because it's never that way. And I think our API community are always put into that situation where it's like, here's the money, you're good to go, you're done, it's over with. COVID is never going to go away. This is going to be lasting impacts for not just years, but for decades. And so one of the areas in which I would like to push is that we not only take a look at how the funding impacted our communities, but the fact that while COVID impacted all communities, this funding was shared amongst our Latino communities, our Black and Brown communities, all communities, LGBTQ plus community. It wasn't just specific to our AA and HPI communities. And so I look forward to hearing from those who are coming to speak today. But I want to thank those organizations that are here today who made the time to come out here, not only to testify, but to show their support in this. And specifically, my sister's house, Christine Nguyen, is here, Lao Family. Those are the organizations which I actually was in the elevator and came up with and told me that they were here. It's truly important that you show up and you're here to voice your concerns if this funding goes away or not get refunded, but also that you continue to push for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Patel.
Yes, I want to thank the chair for convening this very important hearing to review the efficacy and impacts of our equity budget. I was a commissioner on the Asian American Pacific Islander Commission, State Commission, at the time that this equity budget was created and funding for Stop the Hate was initiated. I was able to attend convenings through my position on the commission and saw firsthand the impact that this funding had on our community, not only for directly members of our AA and HPI communities, but also in building solidarity with other groups and learning from them and being able to leverage off the experiences of other community groups that have been fighting these fights for decades. I would like to point out that even in the California versus hate findings, we're seeing that race and ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, and religious hate continue to persist in California. While we see in some categories the incidences go down, we're seeing that it's still persistent throughout California. And it's very important we continue to make sure that our community groups receive the support that they do and deliver it through trusted sources, like Assemblymember Nguyen just pointed out, trusted sources that are able to deliver those resources in a culturally responsive way. So thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to past leaders in the Assembly, including past Assembly Member, Budget Chair Phil Ting, Assembly Member, right? Ting, for making sure this budget happened. And it's on us to ensure that the funding continues to flow where it needs to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Patel. All right, I'm going to invite our first panelists to come up to the desk, please. And just a bit of housekeeping in that sort is each panelist will have about 5 to 7 minutes to speak, and then there will be questions from the committee members after that, so we can have a discussion. But I would definitely encourage you to hit the high points of the things you want to talk about, and then we'll have a conversation from the committee members following each panel. And then after all the panels, we will be doing public comments at the end. All right, so whoever wants to go first, dealer's choice. Whoever wants to go first.
May
All right,
I?
Khadija, you can go first. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Khadija Alam. I proudly serve as the Executive Director of the California Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs. We represent more than 7 million Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community members across California. For over 20 years, we have advised the governor and the legislature on how to best respond to serve our diverse and multilingual communities through political, economic, health, and civic engagement. Our commission has 13 commissioners appointed by the governor, the speaker, and the Senate President Pro Tem. I want to take us back about 20 years ago. In 2004, in our first annual report to the legislature, the commission identified an urgent priority to address the perpetual crisis of racial violence against Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. Our recommendation at the time was to support community-based networks to prevent hate violence and respond to the instances of hate because at that time, hate crimes were being significantly underreported. On May 23, 2001, 3 Hmong men returned from a day of fishing and pulled into their Chico apartment complex. A white man confronted them, yelling, "Go back to where you came from." He chased and attacked them, knocking one unconscious. When they called the police, language barriers stalled communication and no interpreter was provided. Later, the men learned the police hadn't recorded the incident. Only after community outcry did officers arrest the attacker with battery causing serious injury. The same 2004 report also documented the backlash following September 11, 2001. In the 9 weeks after the attacks, California experienced a surge in hate crimes. At the time, Attorney General Bill Lockyer reported 428 hate crimes in categories that included Arab and Middle Eastern victims, a 346% increase over the previous years. Anti-Muslim hate crimes rose by 2,300%. And even then, law enforcement officials acknowledged that hate crimes were often misclassified, particularly when victims were South Asian, Sikh, or perceived to be Muslim. 2 decades ago, we warned that when communities cannot report safely and in their own language, they disappear from the data. This is why the Stop the Hate program exists. Because without culturally competent support, victims don't just suffer violence, they suffer erasure. Fast forward to COVID-19 pandemic. During COVID-19, California saw a 107% increase in reported anti-Asian hate crimes from 2019 to 2020. The following year, that increased rose to 177%. But reported numbers still tell only part of the truth. The same barriers we identified in 2004 still remained in 2020. Fear of retaliation, lack of trust, limited proficient English, and systematic failures in classification and response. In response to this crisis, the California API Legislative Caucus, the California API Commission, and the grassroots organization led the way to respond to this pandemic of hate. With bold leadership, the state made a historic $166 million investment over 3 years to create the API equity budget. $110 million went specifically to California Department of Social Services to implement the Stop the Hate program in consultation with the California Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs to distribute funding directly to community-based organizations and provide prevention and intervention services. This program was designed intentionally to meet communities where they are, in the languages they speak, through organizations they trust. Even though Stop the Hate programs was in response to the rise in hate in API communities, the initiative was designed to serve all communities affected by hate, including but not limited to Black, Jewish, Muslim, LGBTQ+, Latino, immigrants, people with disabilities, and other marginalized communities. The Stop the Hate program is not just about responding after harm occurs. It is about building a statewide infrastructure rooted in dignity, prevention, and community voice. The program funds mental health care, legal support, victim services, community education, and coordinated regional responses. From the beginning, our commission played a consultation and advising role, holding listening sessions, identifying underserved communities, and providing cultural and language access expertise. We worked closely with the Department of Social Services, whose leadership was essential in designing, implementing, and evaluating this program. This partnership gave us direct visibility into how Stop the Hate program operates on the ground and what its loss would mean. Let me take you to San Jose. There, hate didn't always make headlines. It looked like an 82-year-old Vietnamese grandmother who stopped taking the bus after being shoved and told to go back to where you came from. It looked like a Mandarin-speaking father who endured harassment but never reported it because he didn't believe anyone would understand him. Organizations like Asian Inc. responded with culturally and linguistically competent care. They provided counseling to more than 170 individuals, facilitated healing circles in Vietnamese, Cantonese, Mandarin, and Tagalog, and operated senior escort services reaching 47,000 people. And one elder said plainly, without the escort program, she would have stopped leaving her home entirely. This is not one story. There are hundreds like it, and we still have a long way to go. If Stop the Hate program funding ends, the consequences will not be abstract. Multilingual case managers and culturally competent staff will be laid off. Language access mental health care in Vietnamese, Cantonese, Mandarin, Tagalog, Khmer, Thai, Arabic, and many other languages will disappear. Senior escort programs will shut down. Youth prevention and know your rights programs will be cut. Trust-based reporting networks built over years will collapse. Victims will return to silence, not because the harm stopped, but because help did. We are not speculating. This is what grantees are telling us directly. Hate does not have a sunset. Language barriers are still systematic. Underreporting is still the norm. This decision is not just a fiscal decision. It is a decision about whether California continues to stand with the grandmother who can finally ride a bus again, the father who can report harm in his own language, and the young person who learns their rights before becoming a statistic. The Stop the Hate program is a promise that when hate targets our communities, California responds with action, not silence. Before I close, I want to thank the legislature, Governor Newsom, the Department of Social Services, and our community partners. Your leadership made it possible for hundreds of thousands of Californians to access care, report harm with dignity, and heal in community. We have built something extraordinary. We have built something historic. But progress is fragile. It is the funding. If the funding ends, we will lose more than programs. We will lose trust that took years to earn. Today, California's API Commission is the largest in the nation, and Stop the Hate program has made our state a national model, not just for the API communities, but for all communities facing hate. We are proud of what California has built, and we're asking you to help us protect it. We look forward to continuing this work with you, the governor's office, and our community partners across the state to work to meet hate with resolve, compassion, and of course, resources. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Now I'll turn over to the Department of Social Services.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and members of the committee and the caucus. My name is Eliana Kamowitz. I'm the Office of Equity Director at the California Department of Social Services. I am here to give you an overview of the grantee selection process, as well as our role implementing and administering the program. The Stop the Hate program was created in fiscal year 21-22 to address the statewide increase in hate crimes and hate incidents that disproportionately impacted certain communities, such as the Asian American Pacific Islander community. The department administers the program, as you heard, with our partners at CAPIAA and many of the CBOs across the state. This program seeks to strengthen community safety and well-being by increasing access to services for historically underserved populations. The program funds community-based organizations to provide support for hate incidents victims and survivors, as well as hate prevention and intervention services for the communities most impacted by hate. Services range, as you heard, from mental health to legal assistance and community healing. The program funds 3 core services: direct services, including mental health and wellness support, legal assistance, case management and navigation, and referrals for victims and their families. We also have prevention services, which include arts and cultural programs, youth development, senior safety initiatives, safety planning and training, and multiracial and multi-ethnic community collaboration efforts. We also have a third intervention services category that includes outreach and training on the elements of hate incidents and crimes, restorative justice, coordination with local government partners, and coordinated regional rapid response. A total of 180 organizations across California have provided direct services and support to victims of hate incidents as part of this program and have facilitated our prevention and intervention measures. As you heard, the program was funded at our department through a $150 million state budget allocation distributed across 3 fiscal years. In fiscal year 21-22, we allocated $30 million, 22-23, $40 million, and finally in 23-24, there was an $80 million allocation. To be eligible for the program funding, applicant organizations had to meet several criteria, including being in good standing as 501c3s or 501c5 organizations or be fiscally sponsored. They had to have at least 3 years of administering state-funded subcontracts or subgrants or experience administering grants or subgrants totaling over $1 million. At least 5 years of experience providing services to or funding organizations working on the priority populations that we identified, such as survivors of hate incidents and crimes. And at least 3 years of experience providing or funding organizations that provide anti-hate survivor services and or prevention services. Applicants had to meet all of this criteria and were also evaluated on their capacity and expertise to deliver services effectively to meet the needs of these underrepresented communities and regions across the state. We also assessed the regional and programmatic needs of the community to ensure equitable regional distribution of the funds across the state. Every organization had to prove the track record of serving priority populations and delivering anti-hate services. They all demonstrated the organizational capacity for timely reporting on service data and deliverables and ensured quality control measures were in place. Regional leads were also part of this program, were tasked with coordinating services across multiple counties and supporting grantees. As part of our effort to launch the program, we worked closely with other partners to screen initial applications, manage the selection and review process, evaluated the funding awards, and contracted with external evaluators and technical assistance partners to support grantee activities. As program administrators, the department continues to oversee grant budgets and expenditures. We ensure regulatory compliance and compliance with grant terms, and we provide guidance to grantees on reporting, funding use, and best practices. We are very proud of all the work of our state and community partners that we have accomplished over the 5 years in supporting hate incident victims and survivors and preventing and addressing hate in our diverse California communities. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much for that. I'll turn over to the Commission on the State of Hate now.
Good morning, Chair Lee and esteemed members of the committee. If I could just take one moment, I understand that Congress refused to recognize the passing of a true titan in civil rights. So I'd just like to take a minute to bring that to our Capitol, because this is how we roll, in just loving remembrance of the late Reverend Jesse L. Jackson. I appreciate you letting me deviate a little bit from my prepared statement, but I'm my mom's son. I am Professor Brian Levin, Chair of the California Commission on the State of Hate. The Commission operates to strengthen California's efforts to monitor, prevent, and respond to hate activity. We have 3 strategic priority areas: provide an accounting of hate activity in the state; 2, develop recommendations for enhancing resources and support for those targeted by hate; and 3, developing recommendations for preventing and reducing hate. And I am happy to distribute to all the members today some of our recommendations right here. It's important to note all of our work is evidence-based and community-informed. We've examined literally hundreds of peer-reviewed research studies and consulted with the nation's leading scholars on hate at a time when they are not being invited to the nation's capital, by the way. We've also partnered with numerous community organizations and heard from the public about what they're seeing on the ground and their ideas for solutions. Well, what have we accomplished? We've held 20 community forums across California, and I've been to every single one of them. We've convened scholars and policy experts and interviewed community organizations to create policy recommendations for preventing hate. We've developed a training for law enforcement to respond to reports of hate, And we've issued interim guidance for enhancing California's effort to address hate, including recommendations for preventing hate in schools and online. And we've issued those 42 interim policy recommendations for combating hate in California, which I just referred to. Well, what have we found? Hate in California is widespread and at elevated levels. Hate crime data from various law enforcement agencies, which nationally have broken various records, capture only a small fraction of the volume of hate impacting Californians. To specifically learn from Californians about their experiences with hate, we partnered with our wonderful colleagues in the Civil Rights Department and UCLA to conduct a landmark survey of 20,000 California households. Our data indicates that about 3.1 million Californians experienced at least one act of hate within just 1 year. These include both crimes and non-criminal hate incidents. About 650,000 Californians experienced hate that was potentially criminal in nature, including either physical violence or property damage. When we compared this to law enforcement data, we found that there were potentially well over 500,000 more victims of hate-motivated violence and property damage than are recorded in law enforcement statistics. We saw that many groups who have been historically targeted by hate continue to see hate at disproportionate rates here in California, including our brothers and sisters in the AAPI NH community here in California. We saw high rates of hate against people because of their race, ethnicity, immigration, and housing status, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, and disabilities. An estimated 20% of adults who have unstable housing were a victim of a hate act within a 1-year period, compared to only about 7% of adults with stable housing. And this does not include all victimizations, just reported bias-motivated ones, even though, unlike some other states, neither California hate crime or vulnerable victim laws cover the unhoused. We've also been researching how to support communities after they are targeted by hate. We've learned a few things. First, when people are affected by hate, they need more options than just calling police. Indeed, one survey from several years ago showed that 55% of African Americans are hesitant to call law enforcement when victimized by a crime. Many communities never report hate to law enforcement at all because of distrust, a lack of language services, and other reasons. Moreover, many acts of hate that hurt communities are non-criminal, but people still need support. And I would say in this current environment that we're in, people are less likely to report. Our data reveals that people need a wide range of services beyond just law enforcement. In our survey, we asked Californians about the resources and services they needed after the most severe hate incident they experienced. Nearly 1 in 3 victims of hate did not get the resources and services that they needed. The most common unmet need was mental health services, such as counseling. Other common unmet needs were physical protection, help working with police, legal assistance, financial assistance, and validation or acknowledgement that the incident occurred. Beyond the numbers, we've gathered critical community input from across the state about what communities need to combat hate and blunt its impacts. We've learned that community-based organizations play a key role in preventing hate and delivering culturally aware services to people impacted by hate who may not be able to get services elsewhere. The resources that people say they need, such as mental health services, legal assistance, help working with the police, and even just validation that an incident happened, are exactly what these many wonderful community-based organizations provide. Moreover, we found that providing these resources and services requires a level of local, nuanced, cultural knowledge that only CBOs possess. We also learned that in some cases, CBOs serve as first responders when hate happens. In communities where people do not or cannot report to police, people go to trusted organizations first, who might help them with filing reports, connect them with law enforcement officers who speak their language, and access legal resources and other victim services. Community-based organizations are also critical for building social ties, which research shows can buffer communities from the impacts of hate and other challenges they face. For example, some of the Stop the Hate grantees hosted programs and events to bring community members together and build relationships. We learned one grantee who implemented a series of multicultural art pop-ups that showcased the arts, crafts, games, and cultural histories of their communities. These types of events build community, and research shows that quality social ties can protect people from the adverse health consequences of prejudice and other stressors. As Dr. King counseled, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds, he said. You can read more of our findings and our recommendations in our annual report, which I'm happy to pass our recommendations around. Among the 42 recommendations we've made so far is our recommendation for ongoing investments in resources for communities impacted by hate, including California's nonprofit security grant program, California versus Hate, and grants for community-based organizations such as the Stop the Hate grants. These are not static, however, and we intend more completely to examine in future meetings other issues, as well as including better protections for the unhoused and proposals for restrictions of gun possession by former hate offenders. I want to thank you, Chair, and if I can also just give a shout out to former Assembly Member Ting, who was just a wonderful supporter of this work. And all the members of the committee today who are, as Reverend Jackson said, keeping hope alive. I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you much. I want to thank the panelists and also thank Assemblymember Suchi for joining us too for this special hearing. Members, I'll turn it over if there's any questions you have for the panelists. Assemblymember Patel.
Thank you very much for all of your presentations. Really appreciate the introduction. I have two specific questions. One is, across the various CBOs that were funded through Stop the Hate grants, did we see any common threads for successful implementation, for metrics of success that could be rolled into some kind of, guide for CBOs trying to access grant money and deliver on services? Like a lessons learned or toolkit? Or was it really unique to the communities and what their individual missions were, perhaps?
I'll try to start us off. I think every region is so different, and so the needs of every region were different, and also the nonprofit capacity in every region were different. So the services that were able to be offered. I think one of the strengths of the program has been bringing the organizations together through the regional leads to share best practices with each other. We are still completing our kind of final evaluation of this at least initial round of funding to determine what some of the highlights are, but I think it's really hard to compare apples and oranges. It's very different in each region, and the services provided were also very specific to each community. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
I think I agree with Eliana. I think we have really created an infrastructure in place for these organizations who have never had access to funding before. They have been able to build their capacity. They have been able to provide services, again, in languages that the community actually speaks, and it's been very diverse. And that has created an impact. And I think what we hear again and again is it's just not about one. It's understanding each other's cultures as well. This funding has really been has provided an ability to be cross-culture and understanding each other's roles and, where they come from. So it's been a collaboration that's been happening at the local level. Just last year, I had an opportunity to be part of a collaborative that was put together by, API Equity Alliance, whom you'll hear from. And we were able to hear from organizations from across the board, Jewish or American organizations, organizations that were representing Muslim American organizations, other API organizations, and for them to sit together and really talk about what they could be doing more together to really understand where each group comes from. I think that was for me a really beautiful thing to see, and I think that cultural competency amongst our organizations is really important, and this program has really helped lead the way for that to happen.
What I would just add, and if I could give a compliment to my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Che, who's going to be presenting later for affirmative action, these CBOs, including, for instance, groups like Stop API Hate, have done just such incredible things for our state. And it can vary by the different groups. But what I would say is we see everything from extraordinary victim support to portals for reporting to referrals. So there's a variety of avenues that these particular groups take that serve not as some kind of luxury, but some critical foundation of that bridge that we need to get particularly vulnerable communities to services that include state services and local services as well. We, as a state, cannot do it without them. Yeah. And that's why I would also, by the way, unfortunately, as someone who unfortunately has received a threat or two in his career, these nonprofit security grants are incredibly important. So if I could just, in answering your question, just end by thanking all the representatives of these wonderful groups that are here today, and also the members of the Assembly here who are paying attention to this. We in the Commission are here for you, and we're having a meeting tomorrow. So I encourage you, please, if anybody wants to participate, please let us know so we can put you on an agenda. But it's important to make sure that we take these findings, not just leave them on a bookshelf, but have deliverables, not only from the state side, but ones that are going to be implemented by these important community groups that can do this in a manner that others cannot.
Yeah, thank you for those responses. I think it speaks to the value and necessity of partnering with CBOs, that there isn't some kind of state overarching system, but that we really do need to rely on our local community partners to help deliver these effective programs. I think it speaks to the value of the process we're undertaking here by doing it through CBOs. So thank you.
I would be remiss, I left out our incredible partners in the local human relations commissions as well.
I have one other question specifically around, as someone who came from a school board, a local school board in Poway Unified School District, I had the opportunity to speak to the Commission on the State of Hate during the peak moments of hate against school board trustees and public education in general. And one of the things that we did talk about is the hate that students are experiencing on our campuses. And I saw some statistics in your annual report that about 12% of our students experience hate, teens experience hate, sometimes on campus, but oftentimes in community and through social media. And 25% of our children, our teens, actually are a witness to hate. So that is creating a significant amount of trauma for our young people to have to experience. Did any of the CBOs specifically focus on youth violence or teen bullying, or specifically on bullying in the social media space or hate in social media? That can impact adults as well, by the way.
I can say from our the conversations we've had with grantees, yes, many of them actually supported mental health access or gave mental health access, especially to youth and especially youth of LGBTQ plus communities. There have been many organizations across the board who have. Now, the question is about social media. That's a good question, but I do know that the mental health component has been a huge one across the board for a lot of the grantees.
Thank you for testifying to that. A lot of that is interconnected. It's not always, but a lot of it is. So I appreciate that reflection.
We also have specific grantees that are, I'm just looking at the list here, like Isla Vista Youth Projects or the Community Youth Center of San Francisco. Some of the grantees themselves, the main programming that they provide is to youth.
Yeah.
But I think there's also many organizations that did things like camps or art spaces where you could bring youth from many groups together, which I think is a great preventative measure that, you know, the organization itself may not have been focused on youth, but we're able to bring them into their programming.
And just with respect to youth and politics, our children are watching. This is a chart showing FBI hate crimes along with hate epithets online. And this is from, for instance, November of 2016, where we saw an explosion. We see this commonly, and we're in a national election year now. And along with schools, one of the things that we're unfortunately seeing, and we've seen surveys from, for instance, our friends in the Muslim community, our friends in the Jewish community, and in other advocacy groups across various races and ethnicity, seeing a high level of victimization online involving young people. These tech companies are getting away with something that they shouldn't be allowed to get away with. And this is something that CBOs cannot do on their own. We have to assist them in that regard.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much,
Chair.
Patel. I would just note also, DSS, that I saw in your last report that when you break down the referrals or break down the case services by demographic data, there is an age part. So in the navigation case management referrals section, it was 19.2% of all those clients were 0 to 17, so they're all children, which is still a very substantial amount of them. But I do think in the follow-up, if you can do a comprehensive to Senator Patel and I about just how they're serving children, I think is important too as a follow-up. So Member Corey Jackson, you have some questions?
So I want to challenge this panel to go a little deeper on Dr. Patel's questions about best practices, because I think we really do, even though the activities may look different, the objectives do not. And whether the activities that they engaged in met the objective, I think is the critical question we need to get to. I mean, obviously, there's no group in California, nor has there ever been a group in California who experiences more hate crimes than African Americans. Never has, probably never will. That's just our reality of being Black. But we know what will work and what don't work, right? We know when we see an activity, whether that's going to move the needle in terms of preventing incidents from happening again, whether it will help them to heal, right? Is a healing circle enough? Do you need more, trauma-informed therapy, right? Do you need more CRT? Do you need more? So all I'm saying is that, and if you need more support to be able to get to a point where you can offer best practices, because it is helpful that if you look at any particular ethnic group for preventive services, for victim services, that someone who's never done this before can look and say, these are best practices, right? And that they can be able to even be trained on those best practices to continue to do so. And so I would really challenge us to take it to the next step, that this can't just be, we're just gonna renew the funding. Because that means we may be renewing funding on things that didn't work. And if we can't, and we want to move them, we're not saying we want to move the organization. We want to move an organization into practices that yielded great results and double down on that, or saying that, maybe we won't do these programs anymore. It would have been nice. It makes us feel good, but does it really address issues of hate? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I think that's why an evaluation was part of the statutory authority for this program, because it was an initial round of funding to strengthen the organization, see what services they could provide, encourage them to provide a greater menu of services. But I think after a certain amount of time, the evaluation will speak to what has worked best and what are the menu and array of services that each region should hopefully be able to provide.
And when do you anticipate that evaluation being complete?
It's in process. Hopefully by the end of this
It's
summer.
not like a technology program, is
No,
it?
no.
Where
It's
we'll
an evaluator who's working on it.
We'll see this 5 years from now.
Just to clarify, you said it would be evaluation should be finished this. What were you saying?
Yes, we are hoping. Well, we are providing some organizations with some no-cost extensions to be able to complete their services. So once those services are finalized, hopefully by the end of this year. But we have been talking about this extensively with evaluators. They are talking and interviewing the grantees as we speak. So there is already some progress on that report.
To just clarify, DSS doesn't expect a finished evaluation until the end of 2026, even though this program is about to expire this year.
Well, we're hoping to be able to complete the services and have the full array
Right.
of data and reporting from the organizations before completing the final evaluation.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be important to probably, even if there's a preliminary, whether it's public or not, we need to have some of those conversations so that, again, we got to do better. We did great, right? But we all know we can do better in terms of making sure we move the needle because this is only year 2 of a quite aggressive administration. And we need to double down on best practices, right? So appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Of course. Assemblyman Nguyen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Forgive me, I didn't get a chance to read the report, and I'm not sure it's even in any of this reporting, but I'm wondering because it's going to be a tough budget year. Funding, we're asking for funding that we're very limited in. And so we want to make sure that the funding is used to the best that it can. And as somebody who came from a nonprofit organization, I always felt like we got the crumbs and there's always another organization that administers it that gets the big chunk of it. And I remember when I was applying for this grant, it was like, and my memory can be a little off here, but there were like regional leads who were the administrators. And then from there, it trickled down to other organizations, and then it trickled down to other organizations. My ask is, if we're talking about funding and it going directly to services and directly to people, and we're looking at the thousands of individuals that are impacted, what part of that funding is actually going to organizations that are serving the community, and what percentage of that is going to that is administering it, that really isn't doing much? And if we're talking about putting money back in, I'm just going to be completely honest. I'd rather see the money go directly to the organizations that are truly serving these communities than having it be an admin cost to another admin cost, and then finally the crumbs to the organization that are expected to do the actual work in the community. And sometimes it's a lot less that they receive than those that are administering it at the top. And to me, that's not fair at all, because the real work is at the ground level. The real work is with the people. The real work is when these organizations are providing the mental health counseling. They're working directly with their youth. They're doing these art events, or they are right there doing the counseling with them. That's where the real work is, but the pay is never equal to that at all. So I'm wondering if there's any type of data that shows where the money is going and how it's distributed.
Yeah, we have an awardee list that we can share with you so you can see how much every organization gets. I will say that all of the regional leads are service providers themselves. So they were the organizations that were able to perhaps have more experiences or a broader array of services so that they could support perhaps some of the smaller organizations in providing that services. So everyone is delivering services, hopefully. And I think the idea, at least around this initial funding, was to create infrastructure. So really to also create those connections amongst the organizations, those that did certain types of direct service deliveries with other organizations that could complement that and also serve different communities. So I think that's the other thing you're trying to meet at the same time. If you want in language, it's much more helpful to have a coalition of partners of community-based organizations that have direct trust and cultural and language abilities for each of the different communities. So that is why we end up with so many different organizations that we fund.
Sure.
But yes, the emphasis is on the delivery of service.
Okay, perfect.
If I could just briefly interject, new research, university research out of Europe, and this is why it's so important to have these community organizations part of this. Folks respond to hate victimizations, not only differently based on their age, but based on the community and culture they come out of. So we have to tailor responses on that ground level. So that's why I think it's so important that we do exactly as you say, get to those folks who providing the at the door basis kinds of interventions that really help people from particular communities where they have an expertise. Because as we see, not only with hate victimizations, but with crime victimizations and others as well, different communities and different cultures will respond differently and might need different kinds of services within that.
Just to stay on this point from Assemblymember Jackson, Assemblymember Nguyen, the statutes, I think, as we authorize it, allowed CDSS to do 5% for administrative costs. But do you have a sense of, and I think I want to reinforce Assemblymember Nguyen's point, is in a budget deficit kind of situation, we want to be sure we're spending money as much programmatic money as possible, right? On intervention services, which is community building, legal services, or counseling services. So do you have a sense from the grantee side, whether it be the leads or the CBOs, especially the leads, how much of the money that we dispersed as the grant administrator, was it for their own overhead administration, or was it for personnel? Do you have, or no, sorry, for programmatic? Do you have a differentiation or understanding of how much was programmatic, how much was administrative?
I mean, what we fund often is the salaries of the persons providing the service. Right. So that would be part of what they are providing. But the overhead, as you mentioned, is often very, I mean, even at our department overall, it's 15% usually is what is in an agreement. I can get back to you with the specifics for this program in each of these organizations, but I can imagine it's a lot more than that.
Okay. Yes, that would be very helpful. Did you have a point for Assemblyman Nguyen's point?
Yes, if I may, you're absolutely right. But one of the things we actually heard over and over again from smaller grantees was this funding actually helped them build their capacity that they did not have before. So the next round may actually look very different because we have been able to create that infrastructure and build their capacity, which obviously will go away if we don't continue this funding, but it helped them get to that level of where they can work directly, with the state, or, have staff who is able to continue that those programs and services.
If I could just interject that, I understand that. So when I was at Asian Resources, we would apply for a grant directly with Department of Social Services, directly with Department of Human Assistance, and we would work directly with you all. And then we would bring in smaller organizations to give them that infrastructure and that capacity so that they can understand what it's like to work with, state grants, right? And then get their names in there so that way they can then apply on their own after they've received the experience and know what it's like. What I'm talking about is like when Department of Social Services then finds another lead organization, that lead organization then grants it out to like an Asian Resources, and then we have to grant out. Like there, that's where I see the money is being wasted when there's another in between Department of Social Services and the actual organization that can help bring up other smaller organizations. I completely agree with you. I do. I just, I've seen that happen before, and I just want to make sure that we're making good use of the money that we have. That's all.
Thank you. Assemblymember Marsucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having this very important hearing. I was here in the legislature during the pandemic, as well as when we were debating the APIA equity budget. And so it's good to hear, the oversight and the follow-up in terms of how the funds are being spent. I come from working on hate crimes as early as the 1990s, when there was more of a focus on working with law enforcement and working on prosecuting hate crimes, and so initially, I was proposing, like that we have a statewide hate crimes reporting hotline to go to the Department of Justice. Had many conversations with the community-based organizations about how, the community-based organizations are the trusted partners, especially in immigrant communities. People feel more comfortable going to community-based organizations than to law enforcement, which totally makes sense to me in terms of the comfort level of the reporting and the support services, especially for victims of hate crimes. But I'm wondering if, in the in the overall picture of the grants to the community-based organizations, if there is any programs that involved the CBOs working with law enforcement to try to prevent and to support the victims of hate crimes.
I think one of the outreach programs that we do provide, that many of the organizations provide, is really explaining to people what a hate crime is, in the hopes that in their understanding of what is a crime and what is not, it encourages their reporting to local law enforcement. And I do know that many of the CBO organizations have shared that they have personally kind of helped the person go to the police office and report the crime that they've experienced. I can't tell you which one specifically, but I know that there is information sharing in some places with reporting from law enforcement organizations who know of these programs and can refer the supports that some of the victims need in addition. So I imagine there is collaboration in that way, because I know that there's referrals in the two ways. But we can get back to you on the specific programs that are working on that.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, there is answer to your question, yes, and I can give you a specific example. Sahas is a nonprofit in Southern California, and I can speak anecdotally. I don't have the data, but this organization, there was, for example, one burglary incident because of who this community was, and it was over $8 million. This business, small business, was impacted by this, and for some reason, the business itself couldn't report or couldn't work with the law enforcement in what they needed to address this issue. And an organization, amazing organizations like Sahas, came in and supported and was a do between this business, small business, and the law enforcement to ensure this was reported. And how exactly was it reported? Was it a hate incident? Was it, because, this was a particular group with a specific race? That's how they were burglarized. So there was involvement of law enforcement and how they were able to connect the dots and help support that business to get to an outcome they wanted to see.
All right, thank you for sharing.
Any other questions from the members? All right, I have a couple questions before we go to panel 2, because I want to be respectful of time and move on to our panels as well. But I just wanted to ask for our Commission on the State of Hate, given your advisory role to the legislature, if the Stop the Hate program were reauthorized, are there any changes to the program, including its structure, that you think would better address hate in California? Do you have any structural changes you think you would advise for us if it were to be reauthorized?
I hate to talk out of school without checking with my colleagues, so perhaps I should just make this a personal observation. I think also empowering human relations commissions as part of a liaison with these groups at a time when we're seeing, for instance, Orange County, which used to have the preeminent in this, one of the more preeminent in the state, has been going back. The other thing I would say is we have to be aware that, and I think it was Assemblyperson Jackson who said, the best time to have a friend is before you need a friend. And that is when we look at a couple of things that are coming up in the not too distant future, a very polarized political election year, along with international conflicts, which do not seem to be diminishing. These are instances where we have to be more proactive with respect to our outreach to the community groups. So if I may, I guess if there's a criticism, I would put it upon myself to have our agencies and our sister agencies respond when we see. And one of the things that we did here is we disaggregated 30 years worth of hate crime. Look at this here. You're not gonna be able to see it, but the red at the bottom. So what we're seeing now is because of the confluence of these international events and how the online community responds in the worst way, that I think we have to do two things. Have greater coordination with our colleagues in the community-based organization world and getting our information out so that we can proactively respond. So for instance, if God forbid a war breaks out somewhere, or if we know there's an election, where we can have resources on the ready. So I guess if there was one thing that I would say is that I think we all have to do a bit of a better job of coordinating, and that's not as much of a criticism as a commentary on the times that we live in. When we're seeing this kind of garbage being put up about what it is to be an American by federal government agencies, we're not going to get the help that we thought we would from federal entities. So I think now we have to reinvigorate our state and local connections, but I wouldn't put it just on our friends in the CBO community. I would put it upon myself as well.
Okay, thank you. Very humble feedback. I want to ask DSS a couple questions too. So we're going to have the regional leads as our third and last panel. Can you tell me more the relationship and role between the regional leads and CDSS, since you are the grant administrator? Can you illustrate that a bit more, since it came up a couple times in the conversation?
Yeah, the regional leads have been key to the coordination of each geographic area, and we have had limited staff for this, but we have participated as we can in the meetings that they hold, and we review the reports that they submit to us on both the deliverables that they're asked to do, the number of services they've been providing, the demographic data, and asking kind of follow-up questions as you would on any program of why are there differences, for example, in one region versus another region, or what are the differences in the services. So we have, they are our main point of contact, and they're also very much experts. So I think in different times we have met with them individually to think about what we could do to improve the program.
And in that regard too, as you work with the lead agencies, how's it communicated if there are problems, or if they don't understand how, or if you feel perhaps the funds aren't being used in the most successful or efficient manner? How are those issues worked out with the leads, especially since they're the middle layer with the CBOs?
Yeah, we have regular meetings with them, and I think we are looking at it across the board. We have, asked, for example, are all the funds going to be utilized? Are there partners that are doing better and able to provide more services or need additional help? Or are there partners that are not perhaps meeting the agreements? And so in that way, I think it's also helpful because they can assess an entire region and they can say this community partner has been doing a really good job and they could use additional funding to provide more services, whereas this partner may not be performing in the same way, and maybe don't increase their funds for the next year. So they've been helping us just to assess what services can be delivered in each space, and also in terms of shifting around to support those that are most highly performing.
All right, thank you. And I just want to reiterate again the comments from my colleagues about we need to really identify what are the best practices and double down on those things, because if we are able to fight for this investment again, we have to do a good job selling what is working and moving from what's not. Again, I appreciate our first panelists. Thank you for coming up here today, and I will invite the second panelist to join us shortly. Thank you. Thank you. So if our second panelists can come up, we are doing Looking Back, a grantee's use of funds. We'll be joined by the Jewish Family Services, the Center for Empowering Refugees and Immigrants, the Inland Chinese American Association, and Equality California. All right, and same thing again is please keep your remarks about 6 or 7 minutes, and whoever wants to go first, and that way we can have conversation after your introductory remarks. So whoever would like to go first.
Want me to go? Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Kaylee Levitt, Vice President of Government Affairs at Jewish Family Service in San Diego. At Jewish Family Service, we have served the greater San Diego community for over 100 years with innovative and compassionate support. We provide tools and resources to meet the challenges of today and plan for tomorrow. We empower people of all faiths and backgrounds. Last year, we served over 50,000 individuals. We address the complex issues of housing and food insecurity to the challenges of aging, raising a family, and being an immigrant and refugee. We also provide care coordination and support for Holocaust survivors and address rising anti-Semitism. In 2019, there was a horrific shooting at a synagogue in San Diego, actually in some member of Patel's district. In response to this hate crime, the Jewish community mobilized the best that they could. Survivors and affected family members were connected to law enforcement, but there was not a clear plan and coordination to connect individuals to trauma-informed, culturally competent behavioral health support. This lack of appropriate care is not just an issue with large-scale hate crimes, there's also lack of appropriate support for less severe incidences as well. Exposure from these hate incidents are repetitive, cumulative, trauma becomes chronic, debilitating, and the community carries the trauma silently. Within the Jewish community, members are hypervigilant, feel unsafe in public areas, and experience emotional trauma, but sometimes it doesn't rise to level clinical diagnosis, but still requires support. Traditional behavioral health systems are not designed to serve many community members who feel themselves are not clients, do not seek therapy, and are in crisis because of an identity-based harassment. Across many communities, there is systematic lack of behavioral health support for communities impacted by hate. The Stop the Hate grant filled this critical gap. The grant recognized that hate is a public health issue, not just a criminal justice one. With the Stop the Hate funding, Jewish Family Service created the Jewish Community Emergency Response Team, JCERT, in San Diego. JCERT is not law enforcement and it's not clinical therapy. The program trained 30 highly qualified responders across the county. They received training in trauma-informed care, crisis response principles, suicide prevention, and Jewish cultural competency. JCERT created a network of responders that speak with victims after criminal and non-criminal incidents of hate. They provide the psychological first aid, grounding and stabilizing support, resource navigation, and connection to further community and culturally competent care. After an anti-Semitic incident, we are able to connect people to a caring voice, someone who gets you, the fears, your language, and someone who you can trust. Someone whose role it is to help you process what happened, navigate next steps, and access the right resources. This immediate culturally appropriate response is life-changing. JCERT helps people regain a sense of safety, trust, and belonging in the aftermath of incidents intended to rob them of those very things. JCERT is a cost-effective early intervention. It mitigates more severe and expensive costs later. When hate goes unaddressed, it isolates people, fractures communities, and undermines public trust. JCERT demonstrated that programs like this from the state with state investment can restore safety, strengthen trust between marginalized communities, law enforcement, and government. It also reduces the strain on law enforcement and on long-term public health care systems. However, JCERT needs further investment to stay active and deployable, but it's a model that's replicable and scalable. With rising rates of anti-Semitism and too many incidents of hate across the state, additional funding is needed to protect Californians. With sustained funding, similar culturally responsive response teams could serve communities across California tailored to their own unique cultural context, language, and needs. This program shows and proves that community-based responders work, training non-clinicians expands the safety net, and coordination prevents duplication and confusion during crisis. Once built, this infrastructure serves and protects communities and responds to hate with healing, dignity, and resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next panelist.
Yeah, I'll go next. This is Shirley Fan. I'm from Inland Chinese American Association. First, on behalf of our CBO organization, I wish everybody here in the committee a happy Lunar New Year, of course, and everybody here. And it's good to see Honorable Ms. Leticia Castillo and Dr. Corey Jackson here. So I'm from Inland Empire. Just want to say hi to good old friend. So I just want to, emphasize three missions from ICAA. The first one is to promote cultural exchange to enhance better understanding and collaboration among different ethnic groups, especially AAPI, for the benefit of our society. That's why we host the Lunar Fest every year for 14 years already. Second, we are actively participating in various community-based research projects just to address community-identified issues like hate problems and disparities in healthcare resources to promote social change. I believe Alexandra has already helped me distribute the 1 in 10, the data published by API Data, the research report. So finally, we advocate for underserved groups such as seniors, youth, and people with disability for social inclusion via a variety of community events such as cultural performances, recreational activities like Tai Chi, and we especially prepare Tai Chi clutch and cane for our seniors, and they love it. So canes is not just a tool for assistance, but also a kind of a weapon if it can go through the security system to defend yourself. And educational workshops for mental health. To answer one of the questions, actually, we promoted, de-escalation skills for seniors. Also, digital, anti-fraud, because hatred is normally, hatred in psychological today is a learned behavior. It's not a natural born emotion that we have. We have discussed, at least it's not in Inside Out 2, if everybody watched it. So anyway, so I think the behavior, meaning that it can be trained. So we offer de-escalation workshops, and also for seniors, especially for online fraud. It normally appears as a very sweet tricks for our seniors. So we do educate them for digital safety. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's move on to our next panels.
Thank you, members of this committee. Thank you. We truly appreciate your time and chance to share about our work. My name is Kate Wadsworth. I'm the clinical director at Center for Empowering Refugees and Immigrants. CERI is an Oakland-based CBO with the mission of cultivating healing, advocacy, and empowerment of refugee and immigrant communities. And I truly wish that you could all come to CERI to see our community center, because when you walk in, there's dancing, there's languages, 11 different languages, and 11 different immigrant communities that come together to heal and support each other. We were granted Stop the Hate funding in 2022, and through this funding, we've been able to help hundreds of people improve their mental health, decrease loneliness and isolation, and increase ability to function in society. I want to take this time to highlight the ways we've been able to help the immigrant and refugee communities. Our program takes a multi-tiered approach. We provide individual trauma-informed, evidence-based practice using modalities like EMDR and internal family systems, group therapy for elders, transition age, and youth and adults. And we work collaboratively with Asian Health Services and other local Stop the Hate providers to raise awareness of the impacts of hate-based violence and to support vulnerable communities. Now I want to give you a few real-life stories that are kind of like qualitative information about how I feel like our program has helped others. Through this funding, we launched the All About Love Young Women's Group, a nurturing space for young women of color to feel seen, supported, and empowered. Grounded in Black feminist thought, the group explored how systems of oppression shape their daily lives and how hate affects the communities. Participants bravely shared their experiences, built deep in solidarity, embraced a powerful idea: love is resistance, love for themselves, their identities, and their communities. Together, they practice self-care as strength, learn grounding tools to navigate hostility, and develop ways to support loved ones when harm occurs. The impact reached beyond the circle. As participants carried this confidence and compassion back to their schools, families, and peer networks, modeling courage and leadership. By strengthening their sense of identity and agency, the group helped cultivate young leaders who are better equipped to interrupt harm, build connection, and foster safer community spaces. In a world that often asks young women of color to shrink, this group gave them a space to expand with clarity, confidence, and collective strength. And in a climate where anti-Asian hate has created a real and persistent sense of threat, many community members carry a quiet anxiety in grocery stores, on public transportation, even in their own neighborhoods. Loneliness and social isolation has been declared a public health concern. In partnership with Molly, kind of what you're doing, a refugee from Laos and a co-owner of Tough Love, a nonprofit martial arts gym in Oakland, we created a self-defense workshop, Reclaiming Confidence and Safety, designed especially for elders and community. It was in Khmer, so we were able to have an interpreter, Cambodian, and many of our participants, this was more about learning techniques. In a time when anti-Asian hate has made everyday outings feel uncertain, this was about rebuilding confidence and reclaiming peace of mind. Across the 2 workshops, dozens of elders strengthened their mobility, practiced situational awareness, and learned practical strategies to prevent and respond to unsafe situations. The room was filled with focus, laughter, and solidarity. The transformation was powerful. One elder shared that she used to walk with her head down. Now she walks looking up. Right now, I feel more confident when I walk outside. Another one said she had been attacked on the street. She said, the techniques she taught me made me confident to defend myself. By the end of the program, elders spoke about feeling stronger, safer, and proud of what they had accomplished. In a time when hate seeks to destabilize entire communities, these services restore something fundamental, the ability to feel safe in your own body and your neighborhood. For individual therapy, our therapy focuses on self-care, emotional regulation, and rebuilding an internal sense of peace and safety. Participants learn tools to calm the nervous system, reduce hypervigilance, and strengthen personal safety awareness without living in fear. Again and again, community members tell us that they leave feeling more empowered, more connected, and less alone. One Thai client came to us after experiencing a brutal act of violence that left him hospitalized and struggling with severe PTSD. He was living in constant fear, hyper alert, unable to sleep, reliving the attacks and flashes that made everyday life feel unsafe. He stopped leaving the house, was unable to work, and his relationship suffered. The physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional trauma lingered. Through consistent trauma-informed counseling, he slowly began to reclaim his sense of stability. Session by session, he processed what happened, rebuilt his confidence, and developed practical safety strategies that helped him feel grounded rather than afraid. By the end of the service, he was working again, starting engaging in activities enjoyed and shared. I feel 98% back to myself. This is my last example. We will get you deported. That was the message sent to Than, a Cambodian American grandfather, after he shared his story at a community event. Tan spoke about surviving war and genocide, about losing his homeland, about rebuilding his life in America. He shared the complex realities of immigration and the resilience it takes to start over. Within days, someone had attended the event, published an article calling for his deportation. His personal information was exposed. The article spread websites fueled hate and xenophobia. Soon the harassments began. Neighbors confronted him with threats. Strangers targeted him. Fear followed him everywhere. After surviving violence decades ago, Tan found himself living in fear once again, afraid to go to work, afraid to leave his home, afraid of being reported to ICE. The trauma was overwhelming. No one should have to relive their worst nightmares simply for telling their story. And through the Stop the Hate program, Tan found safety and support when he needed it most. He received mental health counseling to process the trauma. He asked legal consultation to understand his rights and protect himself. He found peer support, a community that reminded him he was not alone. Because of that support, Tan did not disappear. Today, he stands strong. He now helps hundreds of others facing similar threats, turns his fear into leadership and advocacy for his community. He asked me to use an alias, by the way, but there are many more like Tom. People targeted for their race, immigration status, or simply for speaking up. People forced into hiding. People navigating trauma alone. Given the current anti-immigrant rhetoric, we are receiving more requests for services based on the increase in hate incidents and more acute mental health challenges. Now more than ever, it is crucial that we continue funding this work. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erin Arenzi. My pronouns are she, they. I am the Program Director at Equality California. It's good to see members of the LGBTQ Legislative Caucus here, Dr. Jackson, Assemblymember Lee. So Equality California is a statewide LGBTQ civil rights organization. We work across the state of California. Our mission is to bring the voices of LGBTQ people and our allies to the halls of power in California and across the United States, fighting for full justice, health, and lived equality for all LGBTQ people. We're an intersectional community, so when we're fighting for full lived equality for LGBTQ people, we're also fighting for the communities in which we live and work. I want to start by kind of highlighting a cultural practice within LGBTQ spaces, and specifically within trans and gender expansive spaces, which is Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is a tradition that stems back decades now, where as trans and LGBTQ siblings, we get together annually in October to name and remember the people who were taken from our community through anti-transgender violence. I highlight that because the work that we were able to do through this project echoes that kind of cultural, that need in our community, which is one of visibility. Often when transgender people are killed or harmed, the media or police may use their dead name, the wrong gender, the wrong pronouns to kind of talk about this information. So we as a community have long felt a need to stand and recognize people's full lived authentic selves when we're recognizing it, and to make sure that we name them and say who they are. And so one of the things that we were able to do with this project that I think is so powerful is because this project was launched alongside California versus Hate, which it was really brilliant of the state to put that outside the Department of Justice, put that in a civil rights space, which is now the California Department of Civil Rights. One of our main goals was to make sure that LGBTQ people knew there is a space you can go to report what is happening to you. There's a space to go to report harassment, discrimination, and it may not rise to the level of a crime, and maybe you don't want to go to the police. Like many of the communities in this room, we have a long history of conflict with law enforcement that can make that kind of difficult or concerning to do. So we thought it was really important that our community became made aware that the state of California has invested in civil recourse for people who are the victims of hate crimes and discrimination and harassment. So some kind of concrete things that we did to do that, we developed a couple trifolds. One is a Know Your Rights trifold that highlights California versus Hate, but also highlights other things that folks have access to, including like the Victims Access Fund. And we also have a bystander intervention trifold, which highlights like, here's what you should and should not do if you are a witness to violence, if you're a witness to hate and harassment. We have in-house capacity to do things like that in both English and in Spanish, through the partnerships that we were able to develop, because this is such an intersectional grant, because we have these kind of nodes of convening across the state. We were also able to get that translated into 7 additional languages. Resources that are both in language and in culture and LGBTQ specific around hate crimes and harassment are vanishingly rare. So we're really proud and excited to have these. Those are available online on a landing page that we developed. We've also been able to pull together a convening every year, an advisory committee of 8 LGBTQ organizations from across the state that represent diverse geographies, diverse intersectional identities within the LGBTQ community. And we do coalition building and landscape analysis. We kind of ask, hey, what is the biggest need of our community right now? And we put together, we call it a white paper that might not be like, it might not fit the technical definition of a white paper, but it's a community-driven series of recommendations. Our 2024 recommendation was geared towards school boards and how trustees could help build safer environments in the midst of some school boards' meetings, public meetings. People can come, they can give public comment, but that was sometimes leading to, that was becoming a source of hate within the community. Some recommendations to school board trustees, what they could do to make those meetings safer. This last year, it's all about data collection for LGBTQ youth. We can't fully understand the impact that the current climate is having on LGBTQ youth in our public schools unless we're collecting data on them. So really kind of thinking with our community, how do we get to the root of some of these problems, and how do we equip the leaders in our community with what they need in order to meaningfully address those problems. We also won't surprise you, we love going to Prides. So we go to Prides and other community events and we distribute those resources. We were able to talk to 3,400 plus people directly and in very like meaningful ways about these resources. And we reached many, many more through our social medias, our online, and through just kind of leaving a flyer somewhere that someone could pick up and walk away with. I think when we think about the impact of this grant and of this work, it's been a 3-year project now. I think some of what you all have been talking about and some of the projects that I've kind of highlighted today really highlight the work of this. It's intersectional. Our communities, while the types of hate that are geared towards each of our communities manifest differently, they're all rooted in the same underlying problem. And by being able to get together and talk about these things, we're able to really kind of think intersectionally about this work. We're able to learn more about each other's communities. We're able to learn more and more deeply understand the types of intersectional things that people might be facing. And yeah, this has just really been incredible work, and it's been an honor to be part of this project, and I really hope that it will continue.
All right, thank you very much. I want to thank the panelists for uplifting the incredible work you do and also sharing some of the stories of the folks who you work with too. I want to thank Assemblyman Lisa Calderon for joining us too. Do you have any questions or comments from the committee members or anything? Assemblyman Calderon?
No questions, just a comment. I just want to thank all of you for sharing these stories and examples and for the work you do. It's very much needed, especially right now more than ever, and I'm really grateful for all of you.
Well, I have stories to share because I don't know it's time to share stories.
Yeah, let me I'll ask a couple questions. Maybe this will be relevant to the course. But so as you understand from the previous panel, we know this is a program that is up for potential reauthorization. We still have to get that, so it's not taken for any granted. Especially since you have gone through several years with this program, what are the lessons learned from your vantage point that you think the legislature should know to improve the program? Anyone can answer. Sure.
I want to go first.
Sure.
So I think for IE, for these 3 years, I just want to quote one of our community members. They said that ICAA is the lighthouse that illuminated the path ahead for them. And we are very proud of their comment, and we consider ourselves as navigators because we focused on PEI, prevention and early intervention, because we don't do direct service with the STH grant. That's why our grant money is minimal. It's $50K per year. But I think we are small, but we are mighty, is because I want to share a story now that everybody shared. So we served one newly immigrant of 4, 2 parents, 2 kids, 2 sons. The older one, they immigrated to U.S. a little more than 2 years ago. So the older son ended up joining the Navy. The younger son is actually autistic, what we call it neurodiversity. So he was bullied actually in school due to because he's different. I think all the hatred came from the feeling of different, being threatened or danger, right? So we helped this family, we helped the younger son enrolled into the special IEP program, which their comment is that this is the best educational program that they've ever had around the world, because US is not the only country they have been to. And we just want to share that for this, they are they're very grateful for the benefits that they can enjoy in our beautiful, country. This is, I wouldn't consider this like a successful story, because life is full of uncertainty. And the father is actually a legally blind kind of, because he cannot drive. So the mother is taking care of, all the chores, like a driver, and also she has to cook, being like a nanny, and she doesn't have any respite service either, although they are qualified, because the waiting period is over 9 months, 8 months to 9 months. So till today, they still couldn't enjoy that. So what I was trying to say is that the father had a little kind of a condition, and then he has to he had to have therapy service, but his insurance is Cover California, which kind of limited his choices. So we helped him trying to get a therapy service in IE, but believe it or not, for anger management and also these issues, no classes is offered in IE. It might be offered in Orange County or LA County. So what I want to say is that because for Riverside County, I think all of legislators might know that the MESA, was replaced by BESA, and the majority of the budget goes to housing. But like I presented in front of you, the one-pager research report, the AAPI household, 1/5, meaning 20% of them is multi-generational, which means it does create mental health problems, specifically for AAPI. And I really hope that the AAPI caucus can present that and consider the unique situation in IE. So yeah, that's. I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Well, if I can ask again, if the panelists can share any experiences from your lens and working through this grant program for us to improve on or to enable you to be more successful. Sure, if anyone. Yeah.
Is it okay if I go first? I'm very excited about this question. I think it was talked about a little bit earlier, but I think this idea of having small nonprofits that are in the community is critical. Like for example, for CRE, we work with a very specific, 11 different language populations, and they know in the community to come to us, and they know when they come there, they're going to get services in their language, they're going to have cultural competency, people from the community, the trusted messengers. So I think that the main thing I would say is to keep these agencies that can do the niche kind of work, like what you're doing over there and you're doing over there, we're all doing with our communities. That's so key, because a lot of folks won't go to bigger agencies to get mental health services. They won't, because they don't have it in their language and there's not the trust. So that's the biggest thing I would say.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Sure. Any other panelists want to?
I would echo that. Okay. And I think you talked about trust, and it takes so much time to build trust. And like the 3 years that this program has been funded, 3 years is a long time. And also when you're building trust in a community, 3 years is not very much time. And I think someone also, so that just like it's, ideally this is an evolution. I think you said, Dr. Jackson, about like we need to continue pushing the needle forward, not just doing the same thing. But now that we've been here for 3 years, I think a lot of us have, like, I know there's things I want to do in my program that it's like, if we have funding for this again, we're going to push this in this direction. But now we've established this baseline that we can move on.
Thank you. One thing I want to echo what everybody else said is there's so many resources already within the communities, and they're not being leveraged to the extent that they can. There's even like city and county, not city, sorry, mostly county resources. They're not being leveraged, not being accessed, because people aren't going to the communities they trust to get access to these sources. I feel like the Stop the Hate grant created opportunities for more people to get into those services and to use the existing services that are already there. And I also just want to echo quickly what Shirley said, because she's talking as well about the change from MHSA to BHSA is a little bit outside of this. However, so much of the behavioral health resources that are already there in many of the communities was connected to some of that funding, but these programs were able to leverage and to continue and extend some of those programs as well. And there's so much intersection between those, and it really needs to continue a lot of that to ensure that these communities have those resources.
Right. And just also to highlight this part, since most of you are also grant recipients from other programs, comparing this program, how has the structure of the Stop the Hate program served you all for the last 3 years? Because you also are recipients of other programs. So are there other things that we could improve on this side so you have better, efficient delivery service?
Question. Sure. So we got CDC federal funding for 3 years, focused on the COVID vaccination and response, and like crisis response, but it's focused on physical health. And we try to apply to violence prevention program via DOJ, but then they requested that we collaborate with a pro bono agency. I couldn't find any speaking Mandarin. So, I mean, yes, there are fundings out there, but there's so many restrictions, and then there's no one program like STH, Stop the Hate, that really, I think, care about what our communities, what the CBOs, they are struggling with, what are the needs of our communities, because the needs of our community, they are not exactly the same. Like even within Chinese community, the needs of seniors are different from the youth, are different from the disabled families. So I applauded that, but I wish the budget committee can tailor more into the individual or unique needs of the communities. Thank you.
I mean, just from a nonprofit finance management perspective, the fact that this is not a reimbursement-based grant, but that it is a drawdown where we receive periodic,
Thank
periodic dollars based on deliverable. It is very hard to understate how, especially if you do a lot of state contracting, not even a lot, but a significant portion, it can actually cause really significant threat to your fiscal stability if the state's behind, or if there's, who knows, or if you have a large payment up front and then you're waiting 90 days for that money to come back. So that has been huge. And then I also like the flexibility of the work on this. Obviously, we have our core deliverables that we put forth in our grant application. We meet those things, but I think someone said this is really big about capacity building and the number of things we've been able to do where we maybe didn't get enough funding to do a project, but because this funding was flexible, we could kind of merge two sources of funding to, for example, we recently launched legal.eqca.org, which is a legal services clearinghouse that offers LGBTQ competent, no cost or low cost legal services. So it's directing people to existing resources. We didn't need to recreate the wheel. We just needed a yellow pages. But the funding we got for that was a little slim, but we were able to fully do that work in part because we had a little bit of extra support from this. And then we can also talk about that in our report here, that we were able to do that.
Yeah, if I may add, it's like kind of like minding the gaps too, especially cultural. Acculturation, meaning we accept bicultures or any culture, uniqueness that we think we can take into benefit of ourselves. So I think that's a very unique highlight for this program.
Everything they said, and geographic too. That we're able to work with different folks. Like if they can't access service in our area, we can do Zoom and other kinds of services that aren't from other grants. And the collaboration with a lot of other agencies so we can best serve the whole community.
I was going to add of everything they said, but the collaboration with the other communities, and I think I was not aware of this being part of the grant, was the convening, the regional convening as well that happened, and being able to talk with others going on, create a lot of opportunities more for bridge building and coming together with communities that aren't necessarily together, and reduces the tensions overall, improves the civil discourse overall throughout the whole entire county.
When you say you weren't aware, you mean initially you weren't aware and then you participated, or what did you mean?
Of that part of it.
But you were able to participate in the convenience?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We're involved, but just wasn't aware, originally with the specific part of it.
Okay. Okay, great. Last thing, I'll just do a last question before we move on to the next panel is quickly, if this program were to sunset, were to expire, what are the programs that real people are going to lose out on should this fail to be renewed this year?
We will still be there, no matter with funding or not. And that's in short sentence, that's what I will say, on behalf of ICAA. But it's just that, like I think she just mentioned that we are building the capacity, but if we let it go, that means whatever we have, the efforts we have been made through the years, the impact probably wouldn't. So I'd like to change the perspective. Actually, I hope the committee can invest in IE. That's why what I'm thinking, because I think IE has so much potential. The data shows it, the population shows it. From a business perspective, I think it's the best technique is to invest in the people who live there. So, that's my answer.
Dr. Justice, do you want to interject first, or do you want them to answer?
If you're done answering,
yes.
Question.
Well, I think like examples like I gave of like All About Love or our different programs, I think we would have to really look at how we would get those funded. I mean, this is how they're funded. And so it's just another stressor on our community, honestly, if it doesn't get funded.
All right, Dr. Jackson, if you want to go ahead.
You know, one of the critical things about hate is that in many cases, sometimes when hate arises in one group, they tend to sometimes be left on their own to organize their community and try to fend off and, you know, educate people about their own humanity. However, we know that the best cure or the best protection or fight against hate is solidarity. And that it's even more important for groups who are not being targeted at that time to be speaking up for those who are. Has there ever been a time where you have used this program to speak for another group instead of just continuously looking within the own group that you are a trusted messenger for?
I mean, I would say from Siri's perspective, I mean, I'm just going to be honest that with a lot of our folks that are from Cambodia and some of the Southeast Asian communities, there is a lot of hate towards other groups, and there's a lot of discord between African American and Asian communities. And so we've done a lot of work on that. We've done a lot of education. We brought town hall meetings. We talk about it a lot. We have such a diverse group of staff at our agency. So it's a lot of conversation about kind of the different groups that are, you know, oftentimes targeted. And so it's been kind of amazing, especially with our elders, to talk about that and to say, you know, like, we're learning, because some of the statements that come out of people's mouths sometimes is really hard to hear. And so then we have to address that and also do it in a loving way, because this is what they learned. And so, yes, we very much do that. And we are in coalition with lots of other agencies that work with lots of different ethnicities. So that's the way we deal with it. But thank you for that question. It's a really, really important one.
Yeah, I was just going to say in the coalition space, it's not necessarily in this work that we do, but in the coalition space, it allows us the opportunity to be there to show up for others when they're the victims of this. And then in return, they do the same. But this has created more of a platform, I feel like, in San Diego County for having more of that unity and that cohesion amongst individuals to be there and show up for each other.
I would like to add that, thank you, Dr. Jackson, for the question. So I think the impact came from every little act of kindness throughout these years. So we do homeless feeding. It's regardless of the ethnicity. So we want to contribute to the society. You know, so that's why we also donated 75K boxes of you know, masks during COVID to the first responders. So I think we want to be a healthy social fiber that will, you know, promote the inclusion by contributing whatever we have to the society. Yeah, this is regardless of race, I would say. Yeah, thank you.
I'll also add just LGBTQ folks, we're in every community. And so like when immigrants are being terrorized in our communities, like that's our community too. So for example, go to May Day every year, which is obviously a labor movement, but also in a state like California, where we are a huge state of immigrants, like that's a huge immigration population as well. And so I think for us, this work, we always view this work as it's not just LGBTQ individuals within a community. If that community is suffering, LGBTQ siblings within that community are suffering. So it just always has to be intersectional across the way. And again, I think the flexibility of this work really allows for that we can rise to the moment of like our immigrant siblings really need us right now. And so like our community is being also targeted, but like we have to be working together and to be able to see that fiber and that integration is powerful. And this work, by focusing on what unfortunately does bind us together right now, which is that targeting and that discrimination, allows us to build that solidarity and to kind of transform that into instead visibility and celebration of who we are and the full diversity of our community across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, great. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists from our second panel. Thank you so much for coming up all the way to Sacramento. And I'm going to ask that our third and final panel join us up here, representing the AAPI Equity Alliance, Asian Health Services, and Chinese for Affirmative Action. This panel will be looking ahead, community impacts and anticipated needs. All right, thank you for joining us. Whoever wants to go first,
Sure.
but remember just to keep your comments around 6-ish minutes or so. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Or Manju, did you want to go first? Seems you're eager to go first.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lee and members of the Human Services Committee. My name is Manjusha Kulkarni, and I'm Executive Director of AAPI Equity Alliance and a co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate. First, I'd like to thank the legislature, the API Legislative Caucus, and Governor Newsom for the historic $140 million investment in a social safety net of 180 trusted community-based organizations to help Californians fight hate. I'd also like to thank CDSS for being great partners in administering the funds, and I'm also grateful for the leadership of the California Commission on API Affairs and the Civil Rights Department. This investment enabled nearly 2 million Californians to receive direct intervention or prevention services during a time of rising hate crimes. Where the data shows that hate crimes and hate incidents are still on the rise and our federal government is sanctioning hate, we are urgently asking the legislature to reauthorize this critical funding before it expires on July 1st, 2026, this year. My organization, API Equity Alliance, is a coalition of 50 community-based organizations serving the diverse needs of the 1.6 million Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in Los Angeles County. Since 1976, our coalition has been dedicated to improving the lives of LA's APIs through civic engagement, capacity building, and policy advocacy. We are proud to say that we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this May. Because of the breadth and experience in Los Angeles County, which has one quarter of the state's population, CDSS selected us to be the regional lead. As such, we support 42 community-based organizations also selected by CDSS to provide anti-hate programs and services. In that capacity, we provide administrative support, we ensure compliance with grant requirements, and facilitate local and statewide convenings to build trust across our network of partners. I want to share a story of one of our community members in the region who benefited from Stop the Hate, and also that of one of our network partners. First off, I want to apologize for the horrific language that was used, but it gives you an idea of exactly what our community members have experienced. So apologies for that. David was getting off a bus when he heard homophobic threats hurled at him from behind. Fight like a man. You're a pussy. You're a bitch. It was a group of boys who had followed him home. David tried to remain calm, but one of the boys grabbed a metal rod from a bike nearby and severely beat David. He was in a coma for almost 1 week and suffered from physical injuries, leaving him unable to walk. The mental trauma he experienced resulted in post-traumatic stress disorder. With the help of St. John's Community Health Center, David received emergency services from a hospital, as well as mental health support and legal services for victims of crime. St. John's also helped David to relocate to a new and safer neighborhood. This is a horrible example, not unlike the many of the thousands of individuals for whom Stop the Hate grantees have provided much needed help to heal from the hate since the program began almost 4 years ago. Unfortunately, the number of hate incidents and crimes in Los Angeles County, like David's, has only increased in the last decade. The Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission, which publishes an annual hate crimes report with data going back to 1995, reported that LA County has seen a long-term increase as well as a year-over-year rise in reported hate crimes since 2014. In 2014, that number was 390 reported hate crimes. That number increased to over 1,300 hate crimes in 2024, which is the most recent data available. This increase in hate, despite the tremendous work of the Stop the Hate program partners, is a reflection of the fact that we live in a time when hate is perpetuated by our national leaders on a daily basis. Acts of hate prevent California's employees from going to work, California kids from attending schools, and California seniors from getting their groceries and prescriptions. Kathy's case, which I will also share, demonstrates this. Apologies again for the horrific language. Chink, ching chong. This is what Kathy heard every single day at work. Even as a manager, her colleagues made fun of her accent and undermined her for being Korean. She felt belittled. She feared losing her job if she spoke up about it. Over the time, the stress deepened, causing sleep disturbances at night and, of course, self-doubt in the workplace. Kathy sought help from the Korean American Family Services Organization. They provided her with culturally and linguistically affirming mental health care services for 12 weeks. Kathy's therapist helped her process the discrimination, boost her confidence, and provided emotional support, safety planning, and workplace advocacy resources. 4 months later, Kathy spoke out against the discrimination she experienced, demanding to be treated with respect and dignity. Her efforts led her workplace to hold a cultural bias and diversity training for all staff, so that what happened to Kathy wouldn't happen to any other employee. Through the Stop the Hate program, AAPI Equity Alliance and our grantees work to ensure that Californians from marginalized communities get the services they need to enable them to return to school and work and enable them to thrive. As a regional lead, we have hosted quarterly convenings where local community-based organization partners come together to share their work and learn from experts. In past convenings, we have invited the California Civil Rights Department, the California Commission on APIA Affairs, and the Department of Justice to share their work and to share specific resources they offer to victims of hate. Their presentations, as well as others, have enabled grantees to guide their clients to report hate incidents and to learn about local resources. Additionally, we have engaged in significant trust building in our communities. That enables us to bring partners together, facilitate small group conversations, and enables organizations to refer clients to each other. One example is an organization whose expertise is with Chinese American communities was able to refer a Korean-speaking client to an organization in Koreatown to better assist them. I want to end with one last story from our region that demonstrates the long-term benefits of Stop the Hate. Students in Mr. B's classroom passed around a school laptop with the words FN. I'm not going to say those words. KKK for life that were carved into the school laptop. It took over a month for one of his African-American students to report the hate. Shocked and distressed, Mr. B emphasized, "I want this to be an educational moment." He asked the 211 LA Dream Center at his East LA High School to support and run a hate crime workshop. The center provided him with mental health counseling and tools to address hate. They also designed a workshop to help students think critically about the impacts of their words. The student who carved the words expressed his regret openly and sincerely, taking accountability for his actions. After the workshop, students felt more motivated to do more, and they created a campaign called Words Matter, Choose Wisely. The movement even sparked neighboring high school students to organize more dialogue on race. And Mr. B thanks the center for their approach in creating learning opportunities for youth and leading a community to grow and be stronger and better together. As I close, I want to just say we're all aware that our nation has faced tremendous challenges over the last year. In early January of 2025, Los Angeles experienced a natural disaster with the fires in the Palisades and also nearby communities. Weeks later, our country began to experience a national disaster. Our friends and family members have been kidnapped, detained, and deported. Undocumented community members have been removed from their homes. International students have been taken from buses. U.S. citizen children have been abducted from schools. Sadly, these actions have encouraged some Californians to perpetrate hate, including saying that during the commission of these acts, Trump will deport you. Trump will F with you. I'm confident that at some time in the future, the authoritarian regime will end. I'm hopeful, too, that hate in California will decrease. But that will only happen if we still have a civil society that upholds the values of democracy alongside diversity and inclusion. Programs like Stop the Hate and the educational workshops held at the 211 Dream Center enable us to maintain a civil society. Stop the Hate protects all 40 million of our state residents, including the most marginalized, and preserves our values. For that reason, we urge the legislature to continue to invest in this program and thereby invest in California's civil society. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our community's experience and the work of our organizations.
All right, thank you, Anju. Whoever would like to go next?
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and Human Services Committee members and API Caucus members. My name is Julia Liao. I'm the CEO of Asian Health Services. We are a federally qualified health center with 16 sites in Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro. We have served the underserved community for over 5 decades. We provide medical, dental, behavioral health care services to 50,000 patients throughout Alameda County in 14 languages, of which 12 are Asian languages. When the dual pandemic of COVID and anti-Asian hate hit, Oakland Chinatown became one of the epicenters for hate and violence. Our own staff, our patients experienced violence attacks and racism. Our patients, our elders were scared to leave their homes, and the news and social media were constantly filled with the disturbing images of the latest brutal attack. During that time, there were no linguistically and culturally competent programs for Asian survivors in Alameda County. Supported by the Stop the Hate Transformative Grant and Regional Lead Grant, AHS and its partners built a robust system of public health and community interventions combined with systems change initiatives. Survivors of hate received lay counseling and mental health support, resource navigation, emergency financial aid, food deliveries, support groups, community ambassadors, safety interventions, senior transportation, safety accompaniment, leadership empowerment trainings, and so much more. In some of our programming, over 90% of our clients received access to lay mental health counseling within 48 hours of case assignment. This is especially significant given mental health access can sometimes take months on end given the shortage of mental health professionals, let alone those who speak Asian languages. I'd like to share an Asian Health Services patient story. After suffering physical and mental trauma from a violent incident and hate, Elaine, Chinese elder, came to our AHS Community Healing Unit, what we call CHU, seeking help. Scared to leave her home, she had struggled with isolation and fear. And through CHU, she received lay mental health counseling, acupuncture system navigation support. And in the very beginning, she was very reserved, very apprehensive in speaking up. However, participating in our CHU programming, she stated, "I have finally released the harm." Today, she is now a trained AHS community leader, advocating for investments in healthcare access, violence prevention, and language access. As the Bay Area, South Bay, and Central Coast regional lead, AHS supports 44 subgrantees dedicated to supporting survivors of hate from Asian American, Black, Latinx, LGBTQ, disabled, and religious minority communities. AHS provides monthly trainings, capacity building support, and covering topics such as communications, financial reporting, conflict de-escalation, expanding referral networks, and data evaluation. These efforts have strengthened our subgrantees' ability to manage state grants and deliver much-needed culturally responsive care, services, and programming to community members who have experienced violence, crime, and hate. We also supported subgrantees to receive training through our Lay Mental Health Counselor Academy that has actually played a very, very critical role in addressing the mental health workforce gaps with culturally and linguistically competent support. Through our collective programming, we've had over 500,000 who've received support, over 300,000 received prevention services, 100 new community workers were hired across the region, 50 have been certified as lay mental health counselors, 86% developed or strengthened their partnerships with government agencies, and 70% have increased cross-racial collaboration. The regional lead model made this government program more accessible, efficient, and impactful. For places like Alameda County, Santa Barbara County, our regional lead and subgrantees successfully organized at the city and county levels to implement policies that protect immigrants facing hate and xenophobia. They increased local funding for community-based support and legal resources for immigrants. They built multiracial, multilingual coalitions of community-based organizations. Collectively, our region leveraged over $10 million of funding from foundations and donors and government grants and contracts to support anti-hate work. Stop the Hate also provided much more than just direct services. Stop the Hate resulted in deep community transformation through innovation and partnerships. In Oakland's East Lake, Little Saigon neighborhood, Clinton Park reflected years of divestment and social neglect. It really resulted in a breeding ground for hate. Storefronts were frequently broken into, residents were scared to walk by the park, community members of all ethnicities and races were frequent victims of hate and violence. Our Stop the Hate grantee tribe, led efforts to transform Clinton Park by renovating and revitalizing and reopening the recreation center that was owned by the city of Oakland. Tribe's community ambassadors were trained in lay counseling. They brought relationships of trust and safety to the neighborhood. Other Stop the Hate partners added arts and multicultural programming at the revitalized park and the newly reopened recreation center. Between 2021 and 2025, violent crime in Little Saigon, East Lake, dropped by 30%, even as Oakland Police Department staffing decreased by 10%, which is a testament to the community transformation efforts led by our Stop the Hate partners. Currently, 75% of our subgrantees report concern about anti-immigrant hate and targeted violence. Several of our subgrantees, including Siri, who you just heard from, are supporting hundreds of individuals and family members who are impacted by the combination of federal threats, deportation, xenophobia, and hate. Support for the STH program is now needed more than ever. Our Stop the Hate program originated during the rise of anti-Asian hate and evolved to increase resources for all communities targeted by hate crimes, and again is now needed more than ever to serve communities under attack. This year, our communities will experience the deepest Medicaid cuts in history. It's going to result in an exponential increase in uninsured, along with tremendous loss of access to critical public assistance. We are now in need of a critical new safety net that can leverage resources, provide critical trauma-informed services, care, and support while advancing needed systems change at all local and state levels. With the deepest relationships of trust and the experience and capacity that is built with our Stop the Hate funds, Stop the Hate is well positioned to serve as that new safety net, having built a very strong ecosystem and infrastructure of social support and care throughout the state. It is critical now more than ever to continue to invest in the Stop the Hate ecosystem of regional leads and grantees to play a critical and pivotal role in addressing and responding to the historical challenges of our times to protect the health, well-being, and safety of our vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Cynthia Choi with the Chinese for Affirmative Action.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank you, Chair Lee, and members of the Human Services Committee. And a special hat tip to Assemblymember Jackson, who came to San Francisco's Chinatown to learn about the history of survival, resilience, and the preservation of culture, community. My name is Cynthia Che, and I am the co-founder of Stop API Hate. And although I'm not representing the commission today, I'm the Commission on the State of Hate. It's important for me to list that affiliation. But today I'm representing Chinese for Affirmative Action. It's a member organization and fiscal sponsor of the AA-NHPI Equity Network, also known as Mosaic, Movement Solidarity Among AAPI Communities. It's important to note that we are not a regional lead, but we do see ourselves as part of a greater ecosystem that is about advancing equity and an affirmative agenda. So thank you again for this opportunity. For too long, AAPI communities in California have been excluded from meaningful public investment and decision-making. Even as our communities grow in size and visibility, we face overlapping threats, hate violence, anti-immigrant policies, rising housing costs, unsafe workplaces, language barriers, and divestments in schools, healthcare, and transportation. The systems designed to support Californians have not always worked for our communities. Many elders, families, and young people continue to face barriers to services, safety, and civic participation. California has historically lacked a coordinated statewide infrastructure to address these inequities in our communities. The AA-NHPI Equity Network, known also as Mosaic, was created to fill this gap, to ensure our communities are not only included, but mobilized in advancing racial, economic, and social justice across our state. Because racism is systemic, so should its solutions. The network brings together leading API serving organizations, including API Data, API Equity Alliance, AJ SoCal, Asian Law Caucus, Empowering Pacific Islander Communities, and Orange County Asian Pacific Islander Community Alliance, and others. In partnership with Catalyst California, we align with existing multiracial coalitions and tables, centering Black, Latinx, and other communities to advance a shared as well as distinct policy priorities. In essence, our work is to ensure all communities can thrive. Over the past year, we've developed and released a 2026 statewide policy platform grounded in the lived experiences of our communities as well as data, disaggregated data. And I have shared this document with Alexandria, who can make it available to the Human Services Committee members. We have also convened statewide and regional forums to analyze racial disparities and strengthen cross-community understanding, and have built community readiness framework to strengthen policy engagement in areas of our state where there is less infrastructure. And we've identified 3 regions, which include the Inland Empire, Central Valley, and San Diego. And finally, we've advanced narratives promoting multiracial solidarity and prevention-focused responses to violence. Most importantly, We have engaged over 100 community-based organizations and grassroots leaders statewide through our briefings, forums, and consultations. And we're now moving into a phase of our work where we're going to be engaged in doing deeper work in the 3 identified regions that I had named. And it's really an effort to build sustained coordination around building infrastructure, including landscape mapping, leadership development, and identifying regional anchors to support ongoing collaboration. We know at this time that organizations have stretched limited resources to meet these urgent needs that have been so eloquently identified by our prior panelists. And so really our focus is to try to build long-term prevention and policy solutions. Again, as so many of our panelists have articulated, Stop the Hate funding is critical. It's allowed organizations to expand services, improve data collection, strengthen coordination, and shift from purely reactive crisis response towards proactive policy engagement. However, we know that short-term grant cycles and the demands exceeds funding levels to that are on already strained organizations, particularly for those that are smaller community-based providers. Through our statewide regional engagement, we've identified some key gaps: the need for sustained multi-year infrastructure funding, expanded language access investment, targeted capacity building in under-resourced regions, and continued support for disaggregated data. Dedicated resources for multiracial coalition infrastructure building, and ongoing support to rebuild community trust and civic engagement. I did want to note that we are one of the grantees and initiatives that has been granted a 1-year extension so that we can have the time to do our work diligently, and will conclude in July of 2027. And this extension will allow us, again, to do our work very thoughtfully and in collaboration with other affected communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you to our panelists for sharing the work you're doing. Do we have any questions from my colleagues? If not, this is a question that I have been asking of many of our panelists today. Should this program be reauthorized? What are the changes that should happen? And Cynthia, you touched upon this already, so thank you for doing that. But what are the changes to the program you think in your mind will help it better succeed and serve our communities?
Well, I think that one thing that we've really learned through some of our grantees, that it's really been the deep collaboration paired with services, engagement, empowerment that has been really critical. So I think that is going to be really important moving forward. And I would just say that really we've seen that a lot of the critical programming investments have actually addressed, prevented, and even stopped some of the cycles of hate. And because of that, your really investment of dollars, you're putting the investment to do this prevention, to address this, instead of investing dollars into the criminal justice system, to medical bills, and to other sort of legal and lawsuits. So I think that when we think about it, it seems like the investment that we need to make actually will save the state dollars in the long run throughout all of this.
Similarly, what I would add is that, I think what is actually the earlier panel mentioned the fact that a number of the organizations that receive funding are actually very small. And that's something we haven't seen in the past in similar programs. I can say that some of the 42 organizations in Los Angeles County, for example, have just 3 or 4 staff. And so when we think of the regional lead model, I think it's been really helpful in terms of providing that capacity building. These are organizations that have never had state funding before. They don't know how to do some of the work even that they have said they have not been able to on their own necessarily fill out the paperwork. And so that's something that we've been able to do day in and day out as regional leads, is to provide those smaller groups with the support. So I think my answer to your question is really that I think much of this model actually does work as it is. One place that I would say where it can be strengthened is that some of the organizations focused initially on just the outreach component. And I think while outreach is important, and certainly providing flyers of the information of resources and whatnot, that cannot possibly be the be all and end all. And so what we have tried to do actually as regional leads is to ensure that organizations, including those that I mentioned earlier, the very small ones that haven't had state funding to do this type of work before, that they really engage in impactful programs. And I'll just explain one quick impactful program that we at API Equity Alliance are engaged in with a number of member organizations, and it's called the Hope Project. And what it has done is it has taken communities, by ethnicity and language, and held workshops not only to help them process the hate that the community members have experienced, but actually to then move into areas of civic engagement. So I'll give you two examples. One is one of the individuals who participated in the program afterward was a librarian, and she created an Asian American book club, which she had never had in her library before. And she didn't even know what books in her own library were ones that would be interesting to youth and adults of Asian American background. And so that was, one place where we saw some impact in the community, the ripple effects, if you will. Another example is where an individual created a podcast after participating in this program to talk about issues of his community, and to be able to bring in speakers so that individuals would understand issues that are relevant to them and relevant to their communities.
If I may also add, I do want to first start by responding to the fact that California has been a leader in significant investment in responding to hate in our state and nationally. We have been sought after in terms of trying to understand, how did you make this happen in California? Because they also saw the type of investment in terms of both size and the fact that it went directly to community-based organizations who are trusted and are best positioned to serve impacted communities. I would lift up a couple of issues that I think may not have been shared already, which is that because of the diversity in California, I do think it is important to note that no community should be viewed as statistically too small or irrelevant. And so when we look at the diversity of our communities, not just by region, by population, by language, even those that don't actually have a written language, it is important to note that we do have to make sure that those communities get the resources that they're entitled to. So that's really important. And I think this is something that I think all of the regional leads, as well as members of Mosaic, have really tried to advance, is that whenever we advance solutions, we should look at the specific needs of communities, but also look at policy solutions that will benefit all Californians. Finally, I do want to emphasize that promoting community and government collaborations where possible. Sitting on the Commission on the State of Hate, we know that it's very important that we understand what the barriers are to seeking help and support and resources, whether it's at the government level or at the community-based level. We have this saying that there should be no wrong door, that we should be able to support every individual so that they feel seen, heard, and supported.
Yes, thank you for that. And this is for the regional leads. As you are working with community-based organizations, some of them, as you talked about, some are very, very small, very few in staff. How did you work with them to address problems? Especially when we're trying to figure out how to expend the funds or to properly serve populations. You illustrated a couple examples of where they weren't quite sure because they've never worked with state grants before. How did you work with those CBOs, and then how did you communicate that back to DSS as well, since you were that middle layer?
I'd say for us, I mean, we provided, one-on-one trainings, financial reporting, accounting, grant project management support. So we worked very closely with them, and we, again, provided a lot of the kind of infrastructure that was needed, but also teaching and doing capacity building. I think that is really critical as we build up the strength of our community-based organizations, because these are the folks who have the trusted relationships in the community. So when we need to build out a rapid response, these are the folks that we do need to continue to lift up. And as we build out this larger ecosystem, and we worked very closely with CDSS to make sure that we were also partnering and making sure there were communication about sort of the reporting and all of that. So all of our grantees actually have met all the objectives and their goals for their grants.
Well, I would say we do the same. And it's been really important across the 3 years to look at, what their objectives are, what their activities are, and to follow and monitor on a regular basis to ensure, are you on track for achieving those objectives? Are you going to be able to serve this many clients? I would also say on the administrative and financial side, we have our own tracking of when reports are due to us, and so we can make sure then that they are provided to CDSS in a timely way. We've also done a tremendous amount of forecasting, so we see if they're on track to spend the dollars and where they are not. We make sure to communicate that to them way in advance of when that information is due to CDSS, and to make sure that the money is also well spent if they cannot spend it, to ensure overall that the region is able to spend it. And I think that's something that CDSS has looked to us to do throughout the program.
And just one last question. I'm going to turn this over to Chinese for Affirmative Action. I know in the creation of Mosaic, you're still working on that one, and that is a Stop the Hate money that is still yet to be completely dispersed, correct? And I know this is one of the reasons why the evaluation isn't complete yet at all. So what are the challenges you're facing that are preventing you from completing that program right now?
Yeah, so the extension really reflects the fact that we needed more time to develop our framework for how we conduct the capacity building work. So what we're identifying as our community readiness framework. We all have extended relationships and initiatives throughout the state, so we had to take the time to do some assessments around that. And quite honestly, we were very focused on finalizing the policy platform, which again becomes a basis for us to really take a proactive approach to identifying challenges that our communities are experiencing and the priorities and issues that are most important to our communities. But I would actually say that there is an opportunity to do preliminary evaluation. We're one component of the Stop the Hate initiative writ large. And so if the idea is to identify best practices in terms of the programming through the Stop the Hate grant making specifically, I don't think that should preclude being able to complete that, given that our work is really focused on developing a unified policy platform and priorities, and doing specific work in some of the under-resourced regions.
All right, great. Thank you. Seeing as I'm the last person standing right now, I want to thank our panelists for being here. There's definitely much more work. All the panelists, of course, are being here today. There's much more work with to follow through. I believe there will be budget sub-hearings specifically on this topic as well coming up that will be chaired by Assemblymember Jackson, the budget subcommittee. I'd like to thank you again. We're going to transition over to public comment in just a second here. So again, thank you for being here. Just housekeeping on that public comment section is that for folks in the room, I think there are quite a few people who want to make public comment. We're going to limit it to about a minute just so that everyone can get through because we're getting quite late in the day. So if you have public comment, please come up to the microphone. And before we do that, I just also want to uplift that. Oh, you can relocate if you want. As we transition, I want to uplift that what Dr. Corey Jackson talked about is that as we reflect and celebrate Black History Month, Dr. Jackson is right. There probably are no other groups like Black Americans who have suffered so much since even before the inception of this nation 250 years ago. And I'm glad that though the API Caucus has spearheaded this Stop the Hate money, has supported so many other communities who've constantly been marginalized and discriminated against. So this money really is reflective of so many different needs, and I'm quite grateful that it's impacted positively so many communities. So with that, we'll move into public comment. So as folks, if you want to line up and come up to the microphone, just please state your public comment. Try to keep it a minute so we can get through everyone who wants to come up. Or we only have a couple public comments, that's okay too. Sheesh. All right, you may approach the mic.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. So my name is Laureen Pryor, president of Black Youth Leadership Project, a grantee with the Stop the Hate program. We do our work on the ground with students. We take complaints from throughout the communities and we go into students to mitigate issues that they're having, whether it be racial targeting or they feel like the teacher is targeting them. We go in, we do 504s and IEPs to make sure the students are receiving the services that they need to. If you know anything about Sacramento, we are the capital of suspensions, which means Elk Grove is #1 in the state for disproportionate discipline of Black children. And so we do our part. We partner with law enforcement on different things in the community, but we are out here and we are proud to be grantees of this program. And we do hope that the money keeps coming in because it has allowed us to continue to focus on where we need to see the focus at, and that is on our children and what they're experiencing in this state. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanisha Herring on behalf of the NAACP California Hawaii State Conference. I just want to make a note that additional funding from the Stop the Hate grant is critically needed because the demand for services continues to grow and the impact has been tangible and measurable. Throughout this grant, the NAACP California Hawaii State Conference has connected more than 50 individuals with attorneys to address racial harassment and discrimination, primarily in education, housing, and broader civil rights violations. These are not just isolated incidents, but fundamental rights issues that affect where people live, how children learn, and whether families can access equal opportunity. Many of those impacted do not have the financial means to secure legal representation on their own, and without this grant, access to justice would be out of reach. The funding would not only provide direct legal support, but also strengthens accountability, deters future discrimination, and builds community trust in reporting systems. Reauthorizing the program would allow us to expand outreach, increase capacity to meet rising needs, and ensure that communities most affected by discrimination are not left without protection. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki. I am representing the Orange County Asian and Pacific Islander Community Alliance as both a regional lead on the Stop the Hate program for Orange County and the Inland Empire, but also as a transformative grantee. And I think it would be remiss to not mention some pretty significant outcomes that have come from the work of 2 years of building this. In Orange County, we have the first ever coalition called the Orange County Black Solidarity Network that took 2 years to create infrastructure for chambers of commerce, educational systems, law enforcement to come together to work on issues impacting, only 2% of Orange County, but over, I believe, 20% of our hate crimes. Additionally, in San Bernardino County, we have an organization, Family Assistance Program, who has organized in collaboration with LGBTQ, Native, Black, and Latina organizations in San Bernardino, the first ever San Bernardino Human Rights Coalition, in order to address disparities in reporting that are not met by law enforcement. And I think that these are great examples of how, while this program really, really had amazing impact. All of the efforts to create true systemic and transformative change are just getting started. These programs took trust building, it took relationship building with government officials, with various aspects of the communities that we are part of, school boards, public health systems, all of that. And the organizations that we're working with are finally ready to create systemic change on that level. So increased funding or continued funding would be greatly appreciated to have lasting impact for this. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
This is when the mic goes down. Good afternoon. My name is Kayin Heng, and I serve as the president at Sierra Health Foundation Center for Health Program Management, otherwise known as the Center Sierra Health Foundation. The center has had the privilege of serving as the Central Valley and Northern California regional lead for the Stop the Hate portfolio, where we support 35 community-based organizations from across our region. To date, our 35 partners have reached more than 360,000 Californians through community events and outreach, and provided more than 6,000 people with services related to hate incidents by embedding community organizing, education, mental health, and legal services, and much, much more. The Stop the Hate program builds resilience and community power to resist hate directed at Asians, Black, Latinos, members of the LGBT community, Sikh, Jewish, and the Muslim Californians. We strongly support the proposal to extend the state's investment in Stop the Hate beyond June 2026. We are well aware of the disturbing dynamics at play in our national politics, and now is the time to not stop, but rather to continue to stand firm for California's values, including protecting, uplifting, and safeguarding the rich diversity of our state. I understand that you have a copy of information about us and the work that we've done in Central Valley and the Northern California region. I'd like to just point out that on the back of that one pager is a story about Kent Moore, who is among high school students and his family who lives in the Central Valley. Briefly recapping, after enduring years of relentless cyberbullying and in-person harassment, including racial slurs and mockery of his disability on a dedicated, widely followed Instagram account, high school student Kent Moore and his family turned to the Fresno Center's Stop the Hate program for support when the school district failed to take comprehensive action. Frustrated by the decline in Kent's academic performance and mental health well-being, his mother, Mao Her, leveraged the support of the Fresno Center to transform their unacknowledged private pain into a powerful public call for accountability. The organization swiftly orchestrated a high-profile press conference that garnered significant media attention, secured referrals to the ACLU and Asian American Justice Centers for Legal Advocacy, and provided Kent with crucial mental health services, demonstrating how vital partner programming is giving voice to youth, student, and other diverse populations against hate, compelling policy leaders and decision makers to take action, and highlighting the urgent need for continued support against bullying and discrimination. Thank you so much for your time and consideration this afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sydney Fong. I am speaking on behalf of API's Pacific Empowerment Education Fund and our statewide network, which spans 20 counties and represents with representation of over a dozen ethnic groups. We're here to ask the legislature to really continue the investment in our communities. The Stop the Hate program has transformed organizations in our network by 1, scaling pre-existing community outreach work, 2, fostering and deepening multiracial and multi-ethnic coalition building and solidarity, 3, investing in community leaders and to be able to address systems of hate and economic violence, and 4, to support our community organizations to strengthen collective infrastructure that fosters social services, legal aid, and crisis response. And so we are in full support of this program and ask that the leadership renew its investment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sha Vang.
Deputy Director with AAPI Specific Empowerment Education Fund. I won't go into, Sydney talked about our network, so I'm just going to say a few words about how the grant has also benefited API Force. We are a grantee under Sierra Health Foundation. We use the resources to build and maintain a rapid response, a network of community-based organizations ready to share and distribute important announcements about communities. We also develop materials in many Asian American languages to ensure that we reach communities often left out of government processes. And we've trained young leaders to understand the context of hate incidents and restorative interventions. We also build an infrastructure among organizations to participate in democratic processes and make direct connections with tens of thousands of community members. And API Force has worked closely with partner organizations to serve other racial and ethnic groups to address the tensions at the root of mistrust and hate. With that, we encourage you to reauthorize the funding, the Stop the Hate funding, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mario Gonzalez, Executive Director for the Education Leadership Foundation in Fresno, California. Thank you for authorizing this fund the first time around, and we're hoping you authorize it again. With this fund, we've been able to provide legal support for our immigrant victims of hate crimes, providing assistance with applying for U-Visa, victim-based migration processes, and providing legal support in an area that's a rural legal desert, where over 30,000 individuals rely on one attorney or one legal representative, one of the most impoverished communities in the region. And so with that, we thank you for this, and we ask that you continue to reauthorize this.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Vin Sales. I'm with Filipino Community of Sacramento and vicinity. Our organization is one of the oldest organizations here in the Sacramento region that served the Filipino American community. Through this grant, we were able to provide a couple of services to our community that focus on small group work, as well as ethnic media, community-based journalism to address this issue. And I think just going back to what's working, what worked in our community, part of it is really trying to change community norms around reporting and demystifying this issue. So community-based media was really integral in that approach for us. The second issue I want to address is we found really great strides in addressing this issue through a solidarity framework, that this issue does not only impact the Filipino American community, but the African American community, Latinx community, LGBTQ community. Through that work, we believe that really trying to open up that conversation around anti-Blackness and anti-LGBTQ issues is an important conversation to be had in our community. I urge you to continue your support for this program. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and members of the Human Services Committee. My name is Gustavo Gasca Gomez, he, him pronouns, and I am here as an undocumented Californian as part of the Education and Leadership Foundation, standing in solidarity with all of my brothers and sisters who have been impacted by hate incidents or hate crimes, by standing in solidarity with support of all the other CBOs here today, and who are actively and proactively supporting their respective communities who, I may remind all of us, are our neighbors, our families, and our friends. We have just scratched the surface with this round of funding, and we hope that you will please continue us in supporting victims by securing future funding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, chairs and chair and committee members. My name is Priscila Ramos. I am with the Education Leadership Foundation. I'll just keep it brief since a few of my colleagues already went up, but I do want to state how this funding is very crucial at a time when our communities across California are feeling the weight of rising division and hostility. Strong support definitely matters. We hope California continues to lead by example, affirming that every Californian deserves safety, dignity, and belonging. Please continue the investment and stop the hate, reaffirming hate has no place in this state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Vick. I'm speaking as an Oakland resident in Alameda County in the Bay Area. Thank you to Assembly Member Lee for leading this hearing. And I want to mention Clinton Park, which was talked about by Julia. And I want to say that I live 3 blocks away from that park, less than a 5-minute walk. And I remember someone telling me to avoid Clinton Park, how it's full of trash. It had so many unhoused folks. There's been fires there, crime and drug use, just a very unsafe area. And as we mentioned throughout this whole entire hearing, that's where hate breeds when you're feeling unsafe. And I know my neighborhood and the area surrounding, like on International Boulevard, predominantly houses many people of color and low-income folks, including the Asian, Black, and Latinx communities. The city of Oakland has neglected this park for years, despite the highly limited city council effort, but it wasn't until one of our Stop the Hate partners, Tribe, took the initiative last year using majority of their Stop the Hate grant alongside our other partners to revitalize the park. They cleaned up all the trash, employed community ambassadors, brought art, and built trust amongst the small business around the park. So now I'm able to walk right by Clinton Park to Clinton Park with ease. And I'm able to walk by and there's street lights finally, a community garden, an active community center where kids are coming in and out. There's youth services, a lot more foot traffic. I mean, there's always someone I'm saying hi to whenever I walk by. And so many free community events that are just so fun. And that's where all the love is felt. So this grant has invested so much into the people, the land, and built trust with the public community. So this was a huge cultural change for Clinton Park and also for Oakland. And these are the long-lasting and sustained impacts for violence prevention, environmental condition, and for our city, and of course for our communities because of community organizations and Stop the Hate. So I urge the members here to strongly consider continuation of this funding. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vincent Nguyen, a lifelong Oakland resident. So when thinking about the impact of the Stop the Hate grant, one of the first things that comes to mind is an annual event held by one of its recipients, the Oakland Asian Cultural Center. Since the start of the grant, they've held an annual Black History Month and Lunar New Year collaboration. This annual event serves to remind the community of its history of people of different groups coming together to heal in the face of injustice, repeatedly through history and a lot more in these current times. This celebration, which featured Chinese lion dance teams performing with Sama groups and Asian elders attending book talks about the suppression and racism in Brazil, helps to showcase the diversity of Oakland's community. This is a type of cross-racial collaboration that the Stop the Hate program promotes, and I strongly support the continuation of this grant's funding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, Chairperson Lee and committee. My name is Ben Wong with Asian Health Services, and out of the hundreds of grants that I've been involved with over the years, I do want to say that the Stop the Hate grant is one of the most impactful, and I would say one of the most innovative, especially as a state grant program. 3 examples of some of what I would say are best practices that the grant has identified. One is meeting communities where they're at through innovation, such as lay counseling that we talked about during the panels. 2, deep collaboration and having this ecosystem approach where there is strong collaboration. And 3, working towards systems change through empowerment of directly impacted communities, impacted survivors, and really working at local levels as well as statewide levels where we have had policy wins at the local levels and leverage resources to bring even more cohesion and more resources to these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Steph Walsh. I'm the Managing Director for Transcendence Youth Arts Project in San Diego. Our mission is to provide equitable access to dance and performance as well as holistic wraparound services for marginalized youth. Many of our students are members of the groups that we've talked about here today who are experiencing hate, experiencing violence, and Transcendence provides a safe place for them to come, to process, to use dance and creative expression as a way to heal and build resilience in the face of hate. Our creative model also has the students co-creating work with community artists, and it really centers the students, what's important to them, and it really shows them that their voices matter and they have the ability to speak out against hate and injustice just as much as anybody else in the community. Stop the Hate has really helped us in expanding our program to more San Diego youth as well as to their families. We've been able to hold more parent and caregiver workshops in addition to the services we provide for our students. So I do urge the committee to renew the funding, and we are very thankful for the funding that has already been awarded. Thank you.
Hit the mic. Sorry for being height challenged here. Okay. Hello, my name is Cindy Yang, and I'm with the Fresno Center in the Central Valley. I'm a little bit disappointed because Central Valley wasn't being highlighted today, so I'm here. I wasn't supposed to be speaking, but that just kind of I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go and say a few words. But with your support and funding, we established Fresno Center. We were able to establish a transformative a program dedicated to bring LGBT community awareness to our Southeast Asian community, and most importantly, creating a safe space, a affirming space where our youth can gather, connect, and simply be themselves. The space, the space are more than just a meeting room. They're space. They are space, a place for belonging, healing, and empowerment. Through this work, we were able to honor and receive a Stop the Hate LGBT resolution from the city of Fresno, affirming that the importance of inclusion and safety and equity in our community. Through our work, through our I Am or Guyo youth program, we guided youth to explore their identity through culture and history by understanding who they are and where they can come from. And youth build resilience, strengthen their confidence, expand the social network. This program fosters solidarity not only among participants but also across other youth group, creating a bridge of understanding and unity. We are also proud to partner with local enforcement to improve reporting process and trust between community and those who served. We act as a trusted messenger between local enforcement and community member, helping ensure communication is clear, concerns are heard, and relationship are strengthened. Trust does not happen overnight. It builds through ongoing dialogue, collaboration, accountability, together working to create a safer environment for everyone. Additional, through our Beyond a Red Card initiative, we educate family, knowing their rights and preparing for emergencies. Knowing knowledge is power, and prepare provides stability and peace of mind during this very uncertain time. These programs are not just an initiative, they are a lifeline. They represent safety, identity, empowerment, and hope. With your continued funding, we can expand our reach, deepen our impact, ensure that every young person and family we serve has access to support and opportunity. With your respectfully ask for your continued investment with this work so that we can together continue to build a stronger and safer community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kalu Yang, and I'm proud to stand here today as a young Hmong person, rooted in history and shaped by resilience. When we talk about Stop the Hate, people often focus on what we're fighting against, racism, bullying, and discrimination. But today I want to talk about what we are building. I'd say we're building connections, understandings, and identity. As a young Hmong youth, many of us grow up between two worlds at home. We hear stories about our parents and our grandparents talk about war, sacrifice, and starting over. We carry this to help us be stronger. But at school, we sometimes feel different. We hear questions like, where are you really from? Our names are being mispronounced. Our culture can feel invisible. Living between cultures can feel isolating, but being part of the Stop the Hate program at the Fresno Center, especially participating in the Kuya or I Am youth program, helped me see my identity differently. In that space, we talk about our culture and history, built self-awareness, and strengthened resilience, and also created support networks that encourage us. I learned that my roots are not something to hide, but they are something to stand on. When we understand our Hmong language, traditions, and history, we build confidence, we build pride, and we build belonging. And belonging is very powerful. Programs like Stop the Hate create safe spaces where youth can share their stories, feel supported, and grow into who they are meant to be. I ask you to continue supporting funding programs like this. When you invest in youth spaces, you invest in stronger and more united communities. We do not have to choose between being an American and being Hmong. We are both and we belong. When we are rooted in who we are and open to others, we don't just stop hate. We build a future filled of empathy, unity, and respect. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alana Sanchez Prak. I'm born to a Cambodian refugee father and a Filipino immigrant mother. Born and raised in California, now currently living in the Bay Area. And I think when I see acts of violence that are due to hate, I think for me, I don't just see the violence. I mean, that is the very apparent level that you see, but I think beyond that, it's those feelings that contribute to those acts of violence. It's the isolation, the lack of exposure to different communities, not feeling like there's any belonging, similar to what the youth before me just spoke about. And I think with the Stop the Hate program, it really addresses that lack of empathy and that lack of feeling of safety that a lot of these marginalized communities feel. And I do want to emphasize too that through this program, I've been able to participate and support different activities that have been put on by the grantees. There has been a documentary on the lives of Black trans women. There has been cultural exchanges between Spanish-speaking youth, Black youth, and Chinese youth. There's been road trips with Black and Chinese youth to discover the history of both cultures. And I do want to emphasize that this type of state investment wouldn't just be siloed into one community, and that any type of funding that gets invested into the community will be shared and amplified amongst them, because I think what we're all looking to do is create this community connection and to build that sense of empathy and belonging that's going to decrease the violence and hate. So thank you for your time.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sandy Close. I'm the director of Ethnic Media Services, which is now known as American Community Media. And on behalf of hundreds of ethnic news organizations, I wanted to strongly endorse the request to renew the funding for Stop the Hate. For the first time, this program really brought the nonprofit sector in closer alignment with our ethnic media colleagues. Partly the goal was to make sure no person attacked by a hate crime or incident felt invisible, but to raise the profile and work with our nonprofit colleagues to ensure we could support them through our communications. So on behalf of our ethnic media, we wanted to endorse this request to renew Stop the Hate funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Oops, sorry. Hi, my name is Hannah Davino, a mental health program director at Little Manila Rising in Stockton, specifically South Stockton, and I oversee our Stop the Hate funded program, Healing Filipinx, Uplifting Self and Others, where we aim to increase access to holistic health and healing opportunities and normalize mental health struggles. In 2022, Little Manila Rising was thankfully funded through the Stop the Hate grant to increase cross-cultural collaborations, facilitate collective healing through healing circles, supporting BIPOC healers and practitioners, culture-rooted healing sessions, and healing arts initiatives, as well as biannual health and healing clinics serving at least 2,000 people, linking them to mental health services and critical care in South Stockton. More recently, we also partnered up with our youth programs to provide a Know Your Rights training. We provided free food, holistic healing, massage therapy, sound healing, clothing, groceries, and resources to our community. Through this grant, we also hosted a film screening showcasing a film highlighting the stories of Filipino frontline workers and immigrants who are impacted by hate and discrimination in their personal and professional lives with the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes in the pandemic. Under the most recent Stop the Hate funding renewal, we were able to actually offer clinical services, hiring a mental health clinician to provide completely free individual and group therapy to facilitate collective healing from generational, racial, and institutional trauma. Since launching in October 2024, we've been able to link community members to therapy services to about 100 individuals with our small team of clinicians of color. In addition, we worked with Empowering Marginalized Asian Communities, known as EMAC, who works with Southeast Asian immigrant and refugee communities to offer self-defense trainings for elders, youth, LGBTQIA plus communities to empower them and equip them with safety and de-escalation tools. We also, together with EMAC, developed a Stop the Hate reporting tool so that we could gather the amount of hate incidents happening in Central Valley and in Stockton. I'll give you one example of real life impacts. So we work with EMAC and to support an elderly Filipina woman that was attacked at a local Walmart and had her green card stolen in the process. They were able to provide legal support and green card visa replacement fees to support this elderly Filipina woman who was attacked and a survivor of hate crime. In summary, investment in the Stop the Hate funding is critical to prevent hate and intervene in times of hate, especially during this critical time and this political climate. With the loss of this funding opportunity, a few of our critical positions under our Healing Puso Little Manila Rising program is at risk, including our first mental health therapist and our mental health program coordinator, impacting hundreds of families from receiving critical mental health services. We hope that the Stop the Hate funding will be continued to support community-based organizations on the ground who are guiding, uplifting our vulnerable communities in Stockton and promoting community healing. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations, the caboose is here. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Megan Thomas. I'm the president and CEO of Catalyst of San Diego and Imperial Counties, representing your fifth and southernmost regional lead. You asked earlier about what elements of the program we would recommend changing or retaining, and I just want to give a very brief, I promise, 30 seconds highlight of one of the things that is working. Our region is San Diego County, which goes about halfway east to west, and then the middle point to Arizona is Imperial County. In the first iteration of Stop the Hate, there were no grantees in Imperial County. When it was extended and expanded, we were able to work with our partners there, and so there is currently one PSP, one funded program out there, but we also are able to work with the unfunded programs in both San Diego and Imperial counties. Even though they're not prepared to be a state grantee or a state subcontractor, we've been able to bring them into the network and coalition, build their capacity, enable them to be a part of this networked effort that everyone has spoken so highly about. So just wanted to give you that example and urge you to consider retaining the coalition building and capacity building elements of the program. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Last call for any other members of the public wish to make a public testimony. All right, seeing none, I want to thank all of our panelists and members of the public for traveling all the way to Sacramento for this important hearing. We heard today that, of course, hate is still unfortunately very prominent in our communities and will likely continue to intensify. I want to continue to have conversations about this program as it winds down, and my staff will be in constant communication with especially a lot of our panelists today. So I appreciate everyone's participation today, and today's hearing is officially adjourned.